What's up, everybody? This your boy Sean, aka Puff Comments 83. And we are back with our second Wrestlemania discussion. Today we're going to be discussing Wrestlemanias 14 up to 26. And I am joined by not Varangian Vigilante, but Do-Rag Vince Rangian.
What up, my G?
Hey, as soon as I saw you pop up on the screen, I'm like,
excuse me while I whip this out.
What should I say? I am welcome in the suburbs and in the hood.
And that's why, you know, like this version of Ranger Vigilante is the newest member of the nation.
We are the nation of domination.
Yes. Man. So last week was a hell of a ride going through the first 13 WrestleManias.
What should I say? I'm a creation of Jacob, so. But yeah, last week we nearly went 3 hours talking the first 13 Manias, and now most likely we're gonna go nearly another 3 hours because we're doing 14 to 26, the start of the Attitude Era with WrestleMania 14. And I have to say, I was telling you backstage, growing up, the Monday Night Wars was huge for us. You know, this was in that high school period for us, and everybody was coming to school with NWO shirts, with Austin 316 shirts. It was like pick and choose. You know, you had loyalists to WCW, you had the WWF loyalists, and then you had the ones that say, I'm flipping the channels and watching both. Yeah. It was an exciting time. And you throw in ECW as a side piece, and it's like, man, we were all living in wrestling heaven back then. Sadly, ECW was not available like here, but I religiously watched, of course, WCW, and boy, WrestleMania 14 and 15 were hard to get through. This was before Russo came to WCW to destroy it.
Yeah, he was sent there to destroy WCW.
Which is, I mean, I always say that with any conspiracy theory that basically a lot of conspiracy theories can be very easily explained with human stupidity. And to quote Jim Cornette, like the shit stain, fucking ruined WCW, and at least Vince was smart enough to just like let him unload ideas and just take and adapt like the things that in his mind would like get enough attention, especially in that time. Personally, I think also that that this time, you know, especially like WrestleMania 14 and 15, is look through like a very like nostalgia lens for lots of people, and also WWE itself, you know, since they're basically rewriting history and like the way they sell it now, DX was never that big. Like, it was never like the antithesis of WWE to the NWO. The NWO was a fucking main event. When you look at DX,
juvenile.
It's like, yeah, and DX was like mid-card at best, except for Shawn Michaels in WrestleMania 14. But when you look later, DX was like it was like a glorified mid-card.
I will say, what helped turn the WWF's tide against WCW was them scheduling Mike Tyson to be there from the beginning of the year to WrestleMania. Because Mike Tyson was the most controversial name at the time. Coming off the biting of the ear of Evander Holyfield and him spending jail time in the 90s, Mike Tyson drew a lot of eyes to the WWF.
Mike Tyson at that point, I mean, he's still Mike Tyson, still everybody knows it almost, but end of the 90s Mike Tyson probably was one of the 5 most well-known people on Earth. I think you could have go in any country of this world, if Mike Tyson would have appeared, people would know that it's Mike Tyson. And this is like very rarely done. Like, when you look nowadays, celebrities are almost very much like in a niche except for a few. But back in the day, Mike Tyson was just the world renowned like a celebrity.
And I was just thinking about this last night at the job. I was like, the WWF gets Mike Tyson, and he was very controversial. WCW the year prior got Dennis Rodman, and he was just as controversial with his antics and the things that he was doing. So these two guys brought more eyes to the product for both companies. And they really ended up Rodman being a part of the NWO, and then WWF saying, let's put Mike Tyson in DX to try and copy that.
In the probably one of the best documentaries ever, like The Last Dance. That there is like an NWO match.
Yes. Yes. Rodman hitting DDP with the chair. So, those two figures alone really brought more eyes to wrestling.
Exactly, and because right now, also like with, when they did with the elimination, hey, Dan, what they did with the Elimination Chamber, I had no idea who Travis Scott was before he was like on WWE television.
And he's still a nobody to me.
Yeah, it's a thing. There are almost like no celebrities today, like back in the day. Of course, back in the day, entertainment was more. It was more centralized. Like you didn't have like YouTube where you can just like watch what you want or stream like on demand. It was really very much like you had to watch what they presented to you, and of course that worked very well with creating like worldwide stars, which nowadays very much everybody's in their own niche. But back in the day, end of the 90s, wrestling it really crossed over at that point. It was wrestling was particularly niche. Hey, Kenneth.
Just like Dan said, it transitioned into mainstream media.
Yeah.
And these two acts, Dennis Rodman and Mike Tyson, brought more eyes to it. And the best thing about the WWF was having Mike interact with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and then after WrestleMania, the fans that tuned in for Mike Tyson stuck around because they saw Stone Cold, and then the ratings kept going up. So it was a huge monumental shift for the WWF.
Also like here in Austria, there was just everybody like in school, even people that were not wrestling fans, just like knew Goldberg, Stone Cold.
Yeah, and all those fans watched in that '98 period.
Yeah.
So, man, it was huge. And like I said, we used to go to school, imitate Hogan, imitate Austin, and do the NWO signs and leg drops and stunners.
Who is imitating anybody like here? I mean, like
we would go to the stores, and if somebody, one of the store person pissed us off, we would tell them to suck it and all that stuff. NWO fight, man, we was just wild teenagers back then.
Yeah, that was a good time. But when you look at WrestleMania 14, at first glance, the card looks actually amazing, but the matches are shite. What I was actually very surprised is because actually I think it was like the first time they actually watched WrestleMania 14 and 15. How fucking over the Legion of Doom still was when they came back.
98 was a bad year for the Legion of Doom.
Yeah.
When they added the drunk storyline to Hulk, that was, even at that time, I hated what they was doing to the Legion.
Yeah. But the crazy how. I think actually, except for the main event, they got the biggest pop.
Because they still were over with the crowd. And yet WWF was doing everything they could to sabotage them. And that's what really irked me about 1998 was the booking of the Legion of Doom.
Yeah. And generally,
Go ahead.
There was so much talent that it just booked wrong. for example, like I'm a huge Ken Shamrock fan.
Man, yeah, I definitely see where you're going because the match Shamrock and Rock had at the Royal Rumble was really good. And I thought their King of the Ring final match was just as better. But to have a 5-minute match at the WrestleMania and then do that whole dusty finish?
Yeah, it's and Ken Shamrock's character just didn't work, because he didn't look like the world's most dangerous man. He just looked psychotic. And just imagine having Ken Shamrock with all of his talent, with all of his charisma, with all of his his reputation booked with the gimmick of Dean Malenko.
Cold.
Instant main eventer. Like, Ken Shamrock could have been back then what Brock Lesnar was later.
And it's funny you mentioned Dean Malenko. That was one of the biggest hindrances on him was he had the great wrestling skills, ice cold, but he was short and he didn't have no personality and no charisma. But to me, I look at that as, well, at least the man can go in the ring.
Malenko was so over with me in WCW. I just love this no bullshit technical excellence gimmick, and Malenko sold it so well. Except for that one time when he jumped out of the ring when it was. But Ken Shamrock with that gimmick, instant main eventer.
Yeah, but I don't think it would have been like you said. He would have been great in any other era outside the Attitude Era.
Yeah, and the same also
and another thing is he left before they started with Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit.
Yeah,
all those guys came in, and he could have had some great matches with those guys.
And he had fantastic matches, and he should not. I mean, I'm a big Shamrock fan. He should have not gone back to the UFC. That didn't turn out.
Didn't turn out well.
Yeah.
His best years in UFC was the mid-90s.
Exactly, and
his
also
Pancreas stuff was good too.
Pancreas stuff was fantastic. I think Pancreas, in terms of, also I also think that Bess Rutten would have been fantastic in wrestling. That would have been also
he had a personality.
Exactly, because with Pancreas you also needed to have the personality, because it was really wrestling, but of course with open hand attacks, but also of course shoot based, except for some matches, what some people say. But yeah, you could have taken out so much talent from Pancreas and put them into wrestling. But yeah, it's it's just Ken Shamrock was so underused for what. I mean, he still got title, got the Intercontinental title, etc. He's got a weird incest angle, of course. But yeah, it's and the same goes with Mark Marrow. They totally misbooked him in WWE.
Vince McMahon he saw Sable and he said, "Yeah,
lust in his eyes."
He saw Sable and that was the start. Mark Marrow was pushed to the side
because John B. Bad was such a fantastic mid-cut act at WCW.
And it's funny, Johnny B. Bad was a play on Little Richard.
Yeah.
Now, the two matches that got the most publicity was the main event, of course, and then Undertaker versus Kane.
Yeah, I have to say I'm never a big fan of Kane's matches.
Yeah,
I
understand.
I actually for each WrestleMania, basically I did what was my favorite match of the card, and then I did what was the immortal moment of this WrestleMania in my opinion. And my favorite match actually was Cactus Jack and Terry Funk Charlie against Outlaws, because that was a fun match. It was a really entertaining match. For me, that was actually the only match where I was not watching on double speed. Yeah, it's also just fantastic, of course, to see Terry Funk at WrestleMania. Yeah, so I heard it was the change of Sali was his idea. Still wish he would have just been Terry Funk.
Terry Funk.
Yeah. So, and the immortal moment, of course, is like Mike Tyson turning on DX, and of course Jim Ross, like the Austin era has begun.
And it's funny how we go from 13 to 14, and a lot of people say that 1997 was the start of the Attitude Era, but I say this moment here in 14 is the true start of the Attitude Era.
Yes, I do believe so. Of course, like with every era, you have like a build up to this era, which was the time before.
Because we talked about it after 1992, you saw that transition to the Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels era of it. And Bret Hart was the champion going into WrestleMania 9, which to me is the new generation. You know, even Yokozuna, he won the title, lost it to Hogan, and then got it back. He still represented the new generation. Yeah, so WrestleMania 13 was Austin's elevation with the match with Bret. But once Bret left, got screwed out the company, and then Shawn Michaels got hurt and Austin beat him, that was the graduation for Austin to become the man.
Yeah. And also, like I've seen with WrestleMania 14, Triple H and Owen Hart have a terrible chemistry in the ring.
I don't want to talk about that feud, because that to me, that whole thing with Owen Hart, they really like downgraded him. Yeah. He had a great setup when he came back and attacked Shawn Michaels. They could have really played onto the whole thing of him being that Black Heart. You know, his family got pushed out, and he's still the only one remaining, and they just completely wasted it.
Yeah, there would have been so many fantastic storylines that had like WrestleMania potential. I still think that Farouk versus Rock should have been at one point a WrestleMania match, and a real good match it could have been, of course. Like Simmons can go all the fucking way, like he's like an All-American, and his stuff, like his own matches with NWA and WCW are fantastic. Like, and the Farouk character was actually really cool. Like, was really good back then, and I think that the Nation was quite undersold in back in the day. I also think that Mark Henry, also we get to Mark Henry of course later, it shouldn't have taken so fucking long to get a really good gimmick for Mark Henry.
I mean, they had the world's strongest man right there.
Yeah,
but then they kept putting him in comedy stuff, you know, with his sexual chocolate and all that stuff. Yeah, I love Nation Rock. Like, Nation Rock is, me personally, my favorite version of The Rock. I love corporate rock, and I do love Hollywood rock, but there's something about the Nation Rock when he was still growing as a character that, to me, like, it's just fun to go back and watch. You know, him grow into it.
How Vince would say it, I'm down.
But yeah, overall, WrestleMania 14 ushered in the Attitude Era, but at the same time, you're not going to see no great matches under Vince Russo.
Yeah, it's you know what was the best thing, actually, I think, like from WrestleMania 14, the only thing that got me emotional was actually like the Attitude Legend promo that they did with Killer Kowalski, with Freddie Blassie and Gunnar Monsoon, you know, where Freddie Blassie was like this in black and white, and he said, I can still hear the echoes of them cheering my name. Yeah, that promo was fantastic, and
I like some of the earlier Attitude promos when, you know, they were standing talking about you think you know wrestling and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to say about 14, it's a shame that both Austin and Michaels were kind of broken down in their match.
Yeah.
Because Austin had the bad neck due to the match with Owen, and then Shawn had the back injury at the Rumble. Because their match at King of the Ring 97 was far better. They had way better movement in that match.
It really, you know, at this point where it was like actually really tough when you think about, because you were like building on people that are not around for the long run because of health and other reasons. But yeah, it's let's get to WrestleMania 15, the final Russo WrestleMania.
And look, there's only one match worth talking about, and that's the main event itself.
Yeah,
and even that match, like, again, as a kid, you ate it up. But now when you rewatch the Attitude Era, the one thing that sticks out, and I'm glad Wrestling Bios brought it up in his Reliving the War, them constantly going into the crowd and fighting non-stop. And it gets tiring when you see it do multiple main event matches.
Yeah, exactly. It's and also poor Bart Gunn.
Poor Bart Gunn. Well, they did him dirty.
I have a controversial opinion about WrestleMania 15.
Go ahead and say it, because I don't like WrestleMania 15.
I think that the Undertaker versus Big Boss Man match gets too much shit. I think that the hanging spot was cool. It was just wasted on the Big Boss Man. I loved how the Brute, came from the ceiling almost, like they're gliding downstairs. Only like Cole was annoying because like, could this be symbolic? Is it symbolic? They literally just hung somebody. How symbolic can it be? I like I say, I think people get like too easily offended. Oh, like it was in bad taste. I thought that the hanging spot, how it was done excellent. It was just wasted on a very mid feud.
The problem with that match is you waste the Hell in a Cell on a match that didn't need the Hell in a Cell.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like, I think if the Undertaker would have just like hung some, but throwing no shit at the Big Boss Man. The Big Boss Man was in excellent shape at that point of time, but the Big Boss Man is still a mid-carder. And
on top of that, they both were heels. There was really no investment from the crowd into the match because the Undertaker was doing his Ministry of Darkness stuff, and then Boss Man's part of the corporation.
Yeah.
So it's like, who the hell wants to cheer for either one of them? Yeah. Like, you cheer for the Undertaker because he's the Undertaker, but at the same time, it's like he's going against the Boss Man, and there's really no high interest in watching this match.
But yeah, like I said, it's basically a one-match card where even I, as somebody who is not interested in Stone Cold, is like, the best match on the card is Stone Cold versus The Rock. And the immortal moment for me was actually had nothing to do with the match. It was just to see Gorilla Monsoon for the last time.
Oh man!
Before he passed away, and even though like for the most stupid reason to be like a judge for the boxing match with Butterbean and Bart Gunn, but to see him like stand there and all his grace just sucking it in like the audience, and a few months later he's sadly passing it. It was also crazy that back in the day I thought like an old man died. He was not that old at that point.
He didn't look that old.
Yeah,
like he looked frail.
Yeah, he looked old. Yeah, he looked old for when you're like a teenager and watching it because everybody looked old. But now it's like he died way too soon.
He was the voice of our youth.
Yeah.
So yeah, seeing him one last time, especially at a time where because I watched this pay-per-view live, and I did not expect that to be the final appearance, the final time we see him.
Yeah.
But when I got the news months later that he passed away, I was like, oh man.
And it's like, especially when I was like, because I was like binge watching like all the WrestleManias, that with WrestleMania 20 later, with Bobby Heenan when he gets the Hall of Fame introduction, and he just said he just wishes the Gorilla was here to see it, and that one hit me really hard. Like,
dude, we watching Nitro, and when Bobby in his book said, I am going to mention my friend Gorilla.
Yeah.
Regardless. Because he needed that moment to talk about Gorilla.
Yes.
It was heartfelt.
Because they were like, really, they were brothers. They were like brothers.
Yes.
Yeah,
but
so...
the problem with 15
Russo.
Russo booking. Matches just come out like the complete changing of the matches. You know, like you had the Intercontinental title switch hands so many times throughout that year that it just made the matches feel worthless. Like who cares about Val Venus and all these guys? The hardcore title, nobody cares. And as a fan, you just want to get to the main event. Yeah, everything else on the card was just mediocre as fuck. Even I will say a standout moment though was Triple H beating Kane and then turning heel later on after reuniting with China during that Kane thing.
Yeah, yes, I do have to say, but this also shows how mid-cut DX actually was.
Yeah, and Triple H's like, yeah, I need to move the fuck up.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. And this is why the next WrestleMania we get to it shows the improved roster, but the way that WrestleMania was set up was disappointing in itself. Because it's like you got this amazing roster, but yet you want to make every match a multi-man match, and it becomes like, where's the one-on-one standout?
Yeah,
we're gonna go right into 2000 because, like I said, Rock Austin is the best match of 15, but we can just move on to 2000.
Yeah, 2000 hurts me a little bit as a WCW fan because one of the best things about WrestleMania 2000 is sadly also one of the reasons why WCW suffered a lot is the Radicals and Chris Jericho no longer at WCW. Understandable for them. It's just
that was such a huge blow when they left WCW.
Such a talent.
Because now their mid-card just nosedive.
And back in the day, you know, like the NWO and everything, like, was fun. I loved the NWO. I mean, still rocking the NWO for life, etc. But the reason why everything was so satisfying was because you got these fantastic mid-card luchador cruiserweight matches, these technical masterpieces that worked so well. And you know, also like, of course, like Eddie, and we're gonna talk about Eddie today a lot.
Yes.
He's Latino heat and just China and Latino heat. It worked so well.
Yeah, 2000 WrestleMania 16 you had it right there to give us Rock versus Triple H, but yet you like, well, we need to throw the Big Show involved. Nobody at that time wanted to see it.
You know, that's the thing is with the Big Show. I mean, at the one hand, just by his sheer size, you can just throw him into everything. Just turn him heel or face in an instant. Like, but the WCW, the Giant, is a main event that the Big Show is a mid-carder.
WCW did a better job presenting him as the Giant early on, whereas once he went to the WWF and look, he wrestled Mankind at 15, and he didn't even win the match. He lost by DQ.
Yeah,
like they should have won in there and destroyed Mick Foley.
Yeah, and also I know it became a meme and everything. Hey Al, it became a meme and everything, but his theme is not menacing.
Well, it's the Big Show. And even at that time, I was like, really? The Big Show? That's his name?
Yeah.
Go from the Giant to the Big Show. That's a massive drop-off.
It's almost like two different characters. You know, my favorite match is obviously the match for the Intercontinental and European title. Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, and Chris Jericho in one match. And the match is so well booked that it brings Chris Jericho and Benoit over while Kurt Angle is not gonna get pinned, so he's not losing anything. So like this match is a triple threat match that gets everybody involved over. Is a rarity, because usually there's like one person in there where you know, okay, the person is there like to eat the pin. Yeah, it would have worked better. Like
that one thing when Kurt Angle first came into the WWF, I remember us at school like Kurt Angle boring and stuff like that, and it fed right into what Vince McMahon was planning with Kurt, like be this obnoxious Olympic gold medalist and talk about how people should be good and pure and dismissive of people who like certain things. And the way they booked Kurt and his personality, it was genius. And it's like Kurt Angle was one of those guys that he could be a comedic guy, he could be very serious, and then he could do all the things in the ring that gave him the perfect package of a wrestler.
It's still Kurt Angle was
yes, the 3 eyes was hilarious.
You can't talk well enough about him because he's just also one of the best in-ring performers, probably one of the best 5 in-ring performers, at least of the new millennium, like the new is. Also like of course. Probably he shouldn't have done it health-wise, but his TNA stuff was so fucking good.
And we have to say peak Angle, because Kurt Angle is retired.
Yeah, exactly. Peak Angle.
And yeah, his TNA is stuff of legends.
And of course, like immortal moment. It was very tough to find an immortal moment, like in Wrestlemania 2000. But I still have to say that the triangle ladder match had like a lot of immortal moments. Of course, it
really set the blueprint for what these 3 teams will accomplish in the TLCs.
Yeah, and up to this day, I still think, even though of course my gimmick today would disagree with me because he thinks he looks like a rat, I still think that Christian way better than Edge.
Man, the more, especially with what he's doing in AEW and stuff, I'm like, Look, I never really thought, and we talk about Jey Uso backstage, I never really thought Edge was a legit main event. Because I thought he was nothing more than a mid-card guy, and he really had to, like, win me over with his heel antics and his rated R stuff. But even then, I was like, I still don't see him as a main eventer.
In the hindsight, I really loved the rated R superstar thing back in the day, but also, like, not in hindsight, like, in retrospective, I have to say the reason for it was because everything that was not John Cena was also like, it's like, what is Edge? At least it's not John Cena, so let's cheer for Edge.
Yeah, Edge was a breath of fresh air, but yet they keep giving him short title reigns.
Yeah, it was like, and what Christian like did it also like a TNA.
I love the Instant Classic.
Instant Classic. It was just so much more interesting, and also have to say, just close your eyes. Better than Metalingus.
Yeah, like Christian and TNA was like, to me, I love that one.
And I have to say, like, back in the days in online chats, Captain Charisma was my nickname.
I think I may have seen that because I've seen Captain Charisma in chats many times in the past. So I was like, maybe I did see you.
Maybe one of them was me.
But man, the biggest thing about WrestleMania 2000 that pissed me off was that bullshit ending and the over-reliance on the McMahons. This is where the McMahon family really took over the WWF. Like, and storyline wise, like they really took over.
And the McMahon in every corner was just hell no.
And the match was like 40, damn near 50 minutes for that bullshit Vince McMahon turn heel moment. It's like you can never trust the McMahon. At all. And it's like Vince McMahon in my corner, I'm looking at him with the side eye. I don't trust you, bro, because you Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts, Rag Pence, on what you did at WrestleMania 2000?
Did what's best for business.
But yeah, that ended
because also back then I knew in the future that the Rock's family would take over the WWE. They took it out of my hands. I built this.
Yeah. Also, we mentioned Eddie Guerrero in China. I love that.
Also, like Dan, yes, that's also what I mentioned today. Edge spear, no. There are two good Edge spears in history that we're going to talk about tonight. Is the one, of course, from the TLC, and the one through the burning table with Mick Foley at WrestleMania 22. Those are the only two believable Edge spears. Otherwise, when you look at Edge, he's still like... He's tiny! He's slim!
And he's not believable. Like he said, never sold on the Edge spear.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't lose to a guy that size hitting the spear.
Yeah.
Whereas Goldberg was wrecking fools with the spear.
And Braun Breaker would break Edge in half. Like...
and I said it before, like the spear is the most overused move ever. Like everybody was doing the spear. Roman's doing the spear. Moose is doing the spear. It's like, how many people are using the spear as a setup move or a finish move?
It really needs to be, moves need to again be more protected.
And this is something that Dutch Mantel talked about when they covered Rey Fenix's debut in WWE, and he hit a move, and they're like, man, that's a finish, but the guy kicked out. And then he's like, this is where a producer and the agent need to say, you hit that move, that's your finish.
I think this is a problem we're gonna talk actually today with WrestleMania 20, because I think with WrestleMania 20, like the kicking out of finishes, like from that point of on, like really started for WrestleMania moments.
No, it started with Rock Austin. I will say it started with Rock Austin, especially the next WrestleMania 17. They kicked out of stunners and rock bottoms and stuff like that.
But it was still used very sparingly. Like I think then later it was just overused.
But they set the template, and everybody else started following suit. Where they want to get that kick out at 2.5.
Because it's a very cheap way. It's a very cheap pop way.
And this is where when I heard Dutch Mantel talk about it, and then other old school guys were saying the finish must be protected.
Yes.
And that's why Razor Ramon said, if I'm not going to win the match, then I'm not going to use the Razor's Edge. Because I'm not going to waste my finish.
Damian Priest his indie stuff is amazing. And he is still very much undersold for what could have been his true potential. He's not the youngest anymore. But the thing that bothers me so much is just to use the Razor's Edge as a transition move. This is something where I'm sitting there and it's like the Razor's Edge it's not a transition move. And no. I would even say, how they basically is there's also fucking inflation with move, that basically today, when Seth Rollins won the match against Japanese wrestler Shinji Nakamura, when he won the last man standing match against Shinji Nakamura with a burning hammer, and everybody, it was just a burning hammer.
Bro, I remember when I watched Japanese wrestling and saw the burning hammer, I was like, man, that move is devastating.
Exactly.
That's a match ender.
Yes, such moves should never be allowed to be transitional moves, because first of all, you create just a very unrealistic expectation for what the finisher should be, and it's also not believable. It's, of course, Jim Cornette talks a lot about it, that it's just you don't sell wrestling as real anymore because you're just spawning moves that are unrealistic.
It's that video game mentality. Spawn
Yeah.
moves, spawn moves. How many times is Fool's gonna hit a Canadian destroyer?
Yeah.
That move is destroyed, literally. When P.D. Williams did it in the TNA, match over. But now everybody's doing it, kick out.
Yeah, it's... And this is what I love about Gunther so much. He doesn't even have a finishing move. He just has like a series of devastating moves.
Finish you off with that.
Exactly, he can finish you off with everything. Yeah, it's like, I think really at one point, maybe it's happening, I really hope it's happening, you have to take the break button on it and you have like to take some moves out of the repertoire where you say, hey, these moves need to be retired for a while so we can later bring them back as finishes. You know, like it's the same, it's like also with, I love Cody. Cody rightfully is where he is right now. He worked very hard for it. But the Crossroads is sold as such a weak ass move that he needs like to, like basically in a real match, need at least 3 to get like the pin.
When you have to spawn a finisher to win the match, you're overdoing it.
Yeah, it's not a finisher anymore at this point.
You're overdoing it.
Yeah.
Give me 3 punches, a big boot, and a leg drop to finish somebody off. Then 3 crossroads. At least that was a combo.
Yeah. But yeah, let's get to WrestleMania 17 and
yeah.
peak perf McMahon.
But I will say WrestleMania 17, and again when I mentioned earlier about how people thought WrestleMania 13 in 1997 was the start of the Attitude Era, many people look at 17 as the end of the Attitude Era. And while the WWF brand still went on, I kind of look at it as maybe the Attitude Era ended when they changed their name to WWE and they got the F out. Because then that's when Vince McMahon cut that Ruthless Aggression promo.
Yeah.
So, like, that's where Ruthless Aggression starts. But WrestleMania 17 was not only the true end of the Attitude Era, but it was also the conclusion of the Monday Night Wars.
Yes, and what a sad conclusion it was, you know, especially with the Shane McMahon versus Vince match with Shane being the president and owner of WCW. And you see this skeleton crew of WCW like in the audience.
Way up there in the nosebleeds.
And when, you know, he has probably one of the best drop kicks in the history of wrestling. But
it's RVD.
But when Sean Stasiak is like front and central when you look at the WCW, you're like.
You mentioned drop kick, and one thing that irritated me about Shane McMahon in this match was him doing the Van Terminator.
Yeah.
I was like, good lord, man! Now you stealing Rob Van Dam's moves, man.
However, like my immortal moment from WrestleMania 17 is Linda like dick kicking with it.
I always like the little thing where Vince is looking at Linda and then he's like, oh, let me spread open my legs so she can get the nut shot in. That match is, to me, it's the start of Vince McMahon, his WrestleMania matches.
Yeah.
He knows how to engage with the audience and say, I'm not going to have a wrestling match. It's got to be hardcore.
Yeah.
And while they're not technical masterpieces or nothing, there's some perverse entertainment you get out of these matches. And I say that word because
it's completely it's perfect.
It's got to be, when it comes to a Vince McMahon match, it's got to be bloody. It's got to have some ridiculous spots where he puts himself. Yeah. So it's like, when it comes to Vince McMahon and WrestleMania, he goes all out.
Yeah, I mean, you can say a lot of horrible things about Vince McMahon, but he was never above, like, to doing the job to get something over. Like,
he goes all out.
Yeah.
And him and Shane, they had an entertaining match. Like, I'm not
did.
gonna lie, it was.
I
Every
love
Vince
Vince
McMahon
matches.
match is you're gonna see awkwardness, you're gonna see sloppiness, but you're not gonna be bored.
We're gonna talk a lot about how perfect the Vince match can be at WrestleMania 19.
You know, so
But-
yeah,
but
the
yeah.
match was entertaining.
What also loved with WrestleMania 17 that I love the gimmick battle royale, most of all because for that they brought Mean Gene and Bobby the Brain Heenan back,
Yeah.
and just like the comments of when the Iron Sheik came out, and there was actually a moment like it really got me when Bobby Heenan said that it's gonna be WrestleMania 38 and he's like in the ring and it's like, oh my god, we already passed WrestleMania 38. And just like this one really got me. And also like when Repo Man came out and Mean Gene was saying is like he got my mother-in-law, and Bobby was like, everybody got your mother.
Man, like I said, Bobby, I kind of wish we just gotten one little run of Bobby in WWF one last time.
Yeah,
Even if it's in commentary, I just wish we would have gotten a little bit more of him before he's filed out.
Yeah, Heenan wrote in his book that he thought that Shane didn't like him because he walked out on Vince. That was what Bobby was thinking. But yeah, WrestleMania 17 is also. Personally, I don't think it's the best WrestleMania, but I can see why a lot of people would say it's like the best WrestleMania, and it still holds up like very much. And China looks stunning in it, and you had like Kurt Angle versus Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero like
Yes.
getting a good match out of Test, speaks volumes, of course. And he had. My favorite match on the card is Undertaker versus Triple H. That one felt so real, how the sledgehammer was used. And I always think that Triple H is always the best when a match is a little bit gimmicked. And of course, draws color.
Hey, I ain't never seen a referee get knocked out by an elbow and then stay down for 20.
But the Undertaker Triple H, for me, I think that was the most real, the most visceral match on the card, and of course Undertaker getting over, and not the last Undertaker Triple H WrestleMania match.
Yes. The TLC 2. What makes TLC 2 better than TLC 1 was the inclusion of Lita, Spike Dudley, and Rhino interfering in the match to help their buddies win. And they really added a whole new element to it, because the first TLC just had Lita, side, and she took a spear from Edge. But now all three of them are getting involved, and Rhino was the biggest benefactor to the Edge and Christian. And
Also,
I remember, man, did Edge and Christian need to win again?
I love when Rhino said, in an interview, what is the difference between the spear and the gore?
Yes.
When somebody kicks out of it, it's a spear. When it's the gore, no, it's when nobody kicks out of it, it's the gore.
But yeah, I at the time I was like, man, did Edge and Christian really need to win again? Because they won WrestleMania 16, they won the first TLC, and then they win this one.
Yeah, it's personally I'm happy because Christian is awesome, but I would personally the Dudleys. I would have let the Dudleys go.
Dudleys or the Hardys.
Yeah, then absolutely.
And that move was killing ECW. He was just killing guys in the later years of ECW with the gore. But yeah, I love the TLC too. And that spot where Edge did the spear off the ladder while Jeff Hardy was hanging onto the belt.
Yeah, that's
crazy. And
like
that's a couple years off of Edge.
Yeah, this is. The way he landed, it's a miracle that he didn't get more hurt than he did with the AEW spot. Like,
oh, stupid spot.
Yeah.
At his age, he should not be doing spots like that.
Yes, exactly.
But at this point, he went for gusto, and that was the spot of the night.
Yes, and it's like I said, it's one of the only two believable spears that Edge did in his career.
And then, the main event between Stone Cold and The Rock. Many people say it's the best match they had of the 3 WrestleManias. And they went at it. And I love the build-up, the use of Limp Bizkit's song, My Way or the Highway. The build-up was just phenomenal. And I liked it that they played that tension of Austin being out for a year and The Rock supersedes him. He passed him by. Which is a first because, again, Macho could have been the man, but Hogan was always there. And Hogan never left. So Macho technically never got a chance to be the guy because Hogan was always by his side. The Rock got to be the guy and Austin was out. So when Austin came back, he felt like, I gotta regain my top spot. So they really played into that tension, especially with the Jim Ross interview with both of them sitting down. And I always thought that for guys that were 2 superstars, there's always got to be an alpha and somebody that wants to be that alpha, and they clash. And I thought this match really encapsulated what those 2 characters were. Who is the man?
Yeah, and of course, The Rock's still the number 2 of taking the most beautiful stunner. To the number 1, we're gonna get WrestleMania 18.
But the heel turn by Austin. What do you think of that? I know you're not Austin guy, but in terms of what happened afterwards and the whole alliance stuff and Austin turning heel and business going down, what do you think?
It's very hard for me to have an opinion on it because I was not there when it happened because I was watching WCW and 2001 I was fuck everybody. I'm like,
and you're not alone. There was a lot of people that felt that way. They're like, I'm not watching wrestling.
Exactly. So until of course the NWO came back, lethal poison. So basically, it's really hard for me to have like an opinion about it because I was not invested by it. Like every time I hear it, like that, how people were shocked, I personally don't get it because I didn't care. So I can't really have like an opinion on it.
But the death of WCW and Austin's heel turn really led to that decline in wrestling.
Yes, and of course for Vince it was like a huge win because he can really dictate like every turn because he's like, hey, if you don't be here, what are you gonna do? Go to the NWA, TNA. Of course it's AEW. I basically don't care about except for Christian and some angles here and there, but I just watch them like in highlights because like when I want to watch like hardcore stuff, I'm watching GCW, so AEW doesn't offer anything for me. However, I'm still happy that AEW is around because for wrestlers it really gave them something in their hand, like to go into contract negotiations, which in 2001
they didn't.
It was like join the Kiss My Ass Club or no, or get out of wrestling.
But yeah, WrestleMania 17 is the WrestleMania that's really up there in terms of top to bottom, a really good card, way better than 16. And the main event that had a controversial ending that's still talked about to this day.
Yeah.
So WrestleMania 17 did its job. It was great show. WrestleMania 18.
It's so interesting for WrestleMania 18 because the card is actually very decent. And then I think the card actually overperforms because when you look at the matches, a lot of the matches either have like weak storylines or silly storylines, or exactly, or Diamond DDP versus Christian, where it's like, give this match a proper story and it would have been amazing.
Or Booker T and Edge. Shampoo.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah, and of course Maven versus Goldust, where I think Maven tells the story where he missed the one spot that he should.
Yes, he did talk about that.
Yeah, that he shouldn't have missed, and Vince was furious about it. But for the weak build-up, except for Hogan versus The Rock, which is probably the best wrestling match in history, because wrestling is more than just in-ring performance. It overperforms for what it is. It has a decent card, but it has not, except for the main event and Scott Hall versus Stone Cold. It doesn't have like a card that really screams. Okay, Undertaker Ric Flair. Still, Undertaker Ric Flair is very much an underrated Undertaker match at WrestleMania.
Yeah, I like that match, but I don't really love it. The only thing that I got excited for was when Arn Anderson showed up to hit the spine buster. I'm like, oh shit! It's a mark out moment to see the Enforcer come in and hit a spine buster on the Undertaker.
Exactly.
But I felt like it was like a 20-minute squash. Because Ric Flair didn't get as much offense, and the Undertaker pretty much dominated the match.
But yeah, like I say, it's decent. It's like very decent WrestleMania.
Yes.
Oh, it was just the perfect timing, because when you really think about it, there was no other way than Hogan getting over at this point.
Especially in Toronto, where he had the match with the Ultimate Warrior. Fans still remember that, and they like, we're just happy to see Hogan back in the WWF. Exactly,
it was like at this point, 2002 was when, for our generation, and probably also older, like, when the nostalgia was like a little bit hitting. And maybe we were like also, and I'm pretty sure like a lot of people needed like this nostalgia wave, especially like after the Attitude Era that just smashed everything in that regard. And of course, for a lot of WCW fans like me, it's like you're getting Hollywood Hogan. and also Hogan, I think Jim Cornette said it so well that Hogan needed to be a heel in WCW.
Yes.
But he has to be a face in WWE at that point. And it was still at a point where we didn't get too many informations about Hogan's private life.
When Jim Cornette said that, it's true, because when he went to WCW, he had his fan base. But the WCW crowd, which was loyal to the old Southern wrestling, they did not care for Hogan at all. And there was a loud smattering of boos throughout 1995. That's why he was testing himself with the whole dark side of Hogan and the sword and stuff. You're just giving the fans more ammunition to shoot at you, because you said, oh, I'm dressed in all black, but then you holding the sword and cutting this over the top promo, and it's like, fuck this guy, I'm sick of Hogan. But Hollywood Hogan was necessary,
and like it shouldn't have worked, but Hollywood Hogan was like he was cool. Like, he was really cool. He was like a fucking old guy that managed to be cool. And what we already talked about last week, what a lot of modern wrestling fans, where it's because it's very easy. Hulk Hogan makes himself a very easy target. Like, I am not not disputing that, but to attack Hogan wrestling ring wise, I think that this is absolutely the wrong approach, and this is also the match that proves it, because the in-ring wisdom, the in-ring performance, the in-ring intuition that Hogan has to listen to the crowd and to give them exactly what they need at that point is just a masterwork. This match where The Rock, when Hogan shoves The Rock and The Rock is turning in, it's like,
and the crowd is just
yeah, because it's like everybody was just like, because you really wanted to. At the one hand, you want, of course, The Rock had to go over, but on the other hand, you really wanted to see like the old hero, getting his final glory. This match.
When Hogan kicked out of the rock bottom and started to Hulk
up,
you cannot tell me you didn't feel that energy.
Yeah.
I don't care even if you was hating on Hogan in 2002.
Yeah,
you marked the fuck out when he did that.
Yeah, and then basically, that this is one magical scene. Hogan hits the atomic leg drop, and Jim Ross, he beat Andre the Giant with that move. Like, goosebumps. Wow, this is.
Kind of love Hogan, man.
Yeah. But it's like this match, and Cornette did 4 years ago, like a commentary on this match, which I recommend everybody to listen to because nobody else could just break it down so perfectly. And he basically it's like comes down to like The Rock and Hogan, played the audience like a fiddle.
And credit to The Rock for leaning into being the heel in this match.
Exactly, it was just this is wrestling. Who said like I think there, in terms of what wrestling is, there is no better example that we have recorded than Icon versus Icon, Rock versus Hogan, and that's also for me why it's not only my favorite match, but it's also like the immortal moment. Like,
and when I think about Rock leaning more heel in this match, it's something that upsetted me when RVD fought John Cena at the Hammerstein, and Cena didn't lean into being more heelish.
Yeah, he teased it like he always did, but it was I completely agree with that. And because sadly we are only on a few WrestleManias. It's one more WrestleMania to this, and then we get to the nightmare John Cena.
The dark times of the WWF and WWE. But yeah, this Rock versus Hogan is it's one of those matches. After watching it the first time, you just rewatch it because it gets better upon every rewatch.
It does, and and always the good is like the lore gets always like more added to it with every Hogan interview about that match. Like you get a little a little new fantasy to it.
The same can't be said for sadly Triple H versus Chris Jericho. And the problem with that match was it had the Follow Rock Hogan. In my notes here I'm standing, should have listened to Jericho and let Hogan and Rock main event. But Triple H insisted on it being the main event. Yeah,
I get the reasoning for it that it's the title. There is an argument for it, but also, not always. This is like Icon versus Icon. This is the true once in a lifetime.
We talked about it last week with WrestleMania 11. Shawn and Diesel didn't close it, but Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam did.
Yeah.
So now you have Hogan versus Rock, and Hogan is a legend of WrestleManias.
Yeah.
Automatically, that match is the main event.
Because the thing is up to this day, I think I've never, maybe once I just have to start WrestleMania 18 and just watch the Triple H versus Jericho thing, but every time I start WrestleMania 18 I have to watch Rock versus
By the time
Hogan.
you're done with Rock versus Hogan, you don't even want to watch. Because the women's title match followed that, and they had no reaction. The crowd was dead.
Understandably, it's and up to this day, I have not truly watched and focused on Triple H versus Chris Jericho, even though I love both, except for the next WrestleMania, where definitely was a wrong decision.
We'll talk about that.
We're gonna talk about that, yeah. But but it's still like I just can't focus on this match because it should have never been the main event, and all the focus and all the energy went to Hogan versus Rock.
It didn't help that the build-up to that match was so poor, and it involved more Triple H and Stephanie, with Jericho just being the third wheel. Yeah,
I personally think that maybe because Triple H got like the huge, when he came back from from his injury, he got like a huge pop, and he may mistaken that for that he can carry that to WrestleMania.
And I'm gonna bring this comment up about Dan being sick of babyface Rock. Babyface Triple H just never caught on.
It's not working. It's he
is just a natural heel that you want to hate.
It's the only thing you can having is like as a tweener when he goes against somebody more evil. But
who could be more evil than the guy that swings a sledgehammer and beats up Jim Ross?
John Cena?
No.
Because
I'm talking about Despicable Heel. We haven't seen Despicable Heel.
We're gonna talk about later, but I was that guy after Triple H tapped out to John Cena that was like
biggest heel move ever. Triple H tapping out to John Cena. But yeah, like that. The problem with that match is it didn't have a great build-up. Everybody knew Triple H was winning, so the conclusion was already foregone. Whereas Rock versus Hogan, that was unpredictable. You didn't know whether Hogan was going over or The Rock was.
I thought it was predictable, but they managed to convince you otherwise.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, especially when it comes to Hulk Hogan, you're like, man, there's a chance Hogan might win this match.
Because it's
the NWO. Scott Hall already lost to Steve Austin. We'll talk about that soon. So it's like maybe they'll put Hogan over Rock just to further the NWO thing. But then once the crowd was cheering for Hogan all the way, they're like, nope, we're gonna change that.
Yeah, so like, and this is like also the magic of wrestling, where even though you think you know how it's ending, that during the match you're getting thoughts because they sell it to you, and The Rock and Hogan just sold it perfect.
They sold it to the point where they just said they took away all the heat, whatever heat Jericho and Triple H had.
Yeah,
and even the spot where Stephanie McMahon got pedigreed, it barely got a reaction.
This is probably one of these things where you want to go back in time and just rearrange the card.
And this is the first time Triple H did it. He did it again when we talk about Shawn Michaels' Undertaker, WrestleMania 25. We'll get to that.
Yeah. And of course, talking about selling, The Rock is fantastic at selling a Stone Cold Stunner, but Scott Hall still number one of selling the Stunner. Even at a moment of his career where he
was at a low point, yeah.
It was a very low point, and for a very long time it didn't get better, but it was really a downward spiral. And luckily, thanks to Diamond Dallas Page, without Diamond Dallas Page, Scott Hall would have died way earlier. And so he had some fantastic last years. And for me, this is a match which I think, how it was done was actually, it really did the best what it could at this point. But what makes me so sad about this match is how little we got from Scott Hall for his comeback, because of course also the plane ride from hell incident where a lot of people got released from. But
Wait,
it's
Go ahead. Finish what you're going to say.
like in retrospective, when you look at it, it's just it's like it's a match you can watch and enjoy, but it's just like if we didn't get more real good Scott Hall out of this, is just a little let down, a little sad.
And that's the thing. It's like, imagine had this match happen in 1994, or Razor Ramon versus Stunning Steve Austin.
Oh, that would have been like that. That would have been like I say, like it would have burned down like the whole building. That match.
And even Razor versus Austin pre-neck injury Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Stone Cold.
Yeah,
it would have still been a great match.
What they didn't manage to do in this match, like I still think it's a decent match to watch, because despite both having like a very broken down body at this point, is that they're still amazing in how to like having a control over the crowd. But what they didn't manage was there was just no way that Scott Hall was winning it.
Yeah. And when you think about it, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash's WWF runs here was just a complete afterthought. Like, Scott Hall's problems declined, drug problems. He ended up getting fired because of the whole plane ride from hell. And then Kevin Nash messes up his Achilles. He tears his quad, and he's out for a whole year.
There's still one thing we got to just like worth mentioning, like in this run. I'm just a Booker T. I'm not your suckers.
The start of the whole Booker T thing with Goldust was great, but yeah, that WrestleMania 18 has always been like a mixed bag for me. Yes, Rock Hogan is phenomenal.
Yeah,
and Undertaker and Flair was decent.
Yeah, and then and there were a lot of Razor chants in the audience.
Yeah, we could have gotten Razor, but it would have been sad had he did come out as Razor. But yeah, he still has the problems that he suffered dealing with as Scott Hall. So it really wouldn't have been the Razor that we wanted from that mid-90s.
Sadly, rest in peace, Scott Hall.
Yes. Now we WrestleMania 19, in my personal opinion, is one of the best WrestleManias.
Yeah.
It's 1 week match on the entire card.
Yes, and there's just one match with the total wrong end.
Yes. Like, those two negatives, but it still doesn't detract from how good this show is. It's just so fun because there's so many fantastic matches on it, and like every match, like I think this is like, first of all, WrestleMania 19 starts the show-stealing Shawn Michaels run that he has until WrestleMania 26, where basically there were like two things every WrestleMania knew. It was a match for Undertaker's streak, and you're getting a show-stealing Shawn Michaels performance. Which, this is like the worst modern Undertaker WrestleMania match. Yeah, because he had a great match with Triple H and a pretty good match with Flair. And then they put him in a worthless tag match where he wrestles majority of the match. Him and Nathan Jones against A-Train and Big Show. And it's like, good boy. It's instant skippable.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. I mean, A-Train, of course, never really. I mean, of course, like his stuff in Japan, like fantastic. But I think with WWE, they never booked him right. But otherwise, it's Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho. And Chris Jericho said, even though he main evented WrestleMania 18, he says, actually, this match against Shawn Michaels, this is like his true main event. Which is just, this match is like Shawn Michaels coming back and just like somebody gave him a new body. Where he does just things that are like unrealistic and like.
And it's funny, like this pay-per-view was built around the 4 main events, but that Shawn Jericho match was just as much of a main event as the Big 4.
It's my favorite match of the card.
Yes, it is mine too.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
Now, there's 3 things that happened that we look at as negatives, and that's the Undertaker match, the ending to the Booker T Triple H match, and then Brock Lesnar damn near buffing himself with that shooting star press.
Note on my list: Brock Lesnar is not a human being.
He is so fortunate that he barely missed breaking his neck.
Like, I would say 9 out of 10 wrestlers in that situation either have like died or would have been paralyzed after this. Brock Lesnar is just genetically different. Like, the next WrestleMania still were very good in my opinion, but I also think WrestleMania 19 is it's also in my run for my favorite WrestleManias, and it could have been even so much better. And WWE can I'm a big Triple H mark. WWE can say what they want after it, but there was no way that all of this subtle promos against Booker T were because he was part of WCW. Hell no.
And then they gonna bring in the racial element,
which you can it's wrestling. You can absolutely do that.
But then you have to pay off with the finish.
Exactly.
What pissed me off the most about
the time it took.
Triple H gave this man the pedigree.
Yeah. And
he did not pin him till like maybe 2-3 minutes later. And he won the match.
Every time I'm rewatching it feels longer.
And you know what the worst thing is? Booker T had a WrestleMania moment where he bust out the Harlem Hangover. Should have finished the match with that.
Yeah, it's this match is so wrong. Like I say, I'm a big Triple H, but I'm also a big Booker T guy because WCW.
Booker T had to go through a lot from when he came in 2001 to this point. He had to go through a lot.
It's still, I absolutely love how he revamped himself as King Booker, which was a fantastic run. Yeah, but he should have been champion just as Booker T at this point.
And somebody even mentioned it on one of the posts, because, this whole Booker T Swerve Strickland thing going on and stuff. Somebody mentioned that while Booker T won the World Heavyweight title in the WWE, they felt like he never got the WWE Championship. Because basically the World Heavyweight title was a continuation of the WCW title. But he never got the WWE Championship. And that was kind of like, man, they could have at least made him WWE Champion once.
Yes, he
barely connected, but he did the move.
There's like, of course, a lot of fantastic talent that over the time, but over the duration of the career, it's hard to pick a better worker than Booker. Like from WCW to WWE, then also just he basically made TNA watchable again, and of course, and nowadays he's just. If NXT would not be so excellent as this is right now, you could still watch it just for Booker's T commentary. He's having his Charity King Lawler moments, like where he's like,
Every time Stephanie McCall do that move.
Yeah. I love Booker, and he should have gotten a WWE championship. I still
Yeah, he
think
should have
it's
won, man.
like I mean, when you look at what he won in his life, I think we talked about it in the show, after the show last time when you mentioned the best the bullshit list online about the best
black American
wrestlers.
Yeah.
Still, Booker T can still have his number one. Yes, that's like Booker T is somebody who performed on a high level for so many generations and was so versatile in being like a serious wrestler and being. I mean, not a lot of people could have sold that feud with the Boogeyman.
And I will say, Booker T had to deal with a lot of shit, even in 2000 WCW.
Yeah.
Vince Russo made him world champ, but he gave him such a haphazard reign.
Yeah.
When Booker T drops the belt to Vince fucking Russo, and I literally switched the channel just to see that, I was like, man, fuck this company. I was so mad that Vince Russo tried to copy what he did the year before with Vince McMahon winning the title. And I was like, come on, let Booker T have a respectable reign as champion. So it's like Booker went through a lot of shit, even in WCW. And that ending with the Triple H match was just so fucking...
Yeah, this is probably one of my top 3 moments where I could just go back in time and change something. This is maybe even the number 1 on the WrestleMania list. Booker T should have gone. There's just no way, story-wise, wrestling history-wise, that you can argue that Triple H should have gone over this one.
And even if Booker wins the match, you can find a way later to get the belt back on Triple H, because you know that it's always going to get back on Triple H,
especially during this era. Yeah, but yeah, it's this felt wrong. This was wrong, and like I say, it's wrestling. You can do a story angle like this, but the good guy has to go over.
He has to go over.
He has to go over.
Now, my second best match, Shawn and Jericho was mine. But before that botch ended, I loved the Kurt Angle Brock Lesnar match. Because you had 2 strong wrestlers, like amateur wrestlers, an Olympic gold medalist and a guy who's a collegiate amateur wrestler, and they was going at it.
Yeah, it's still Brock Lesnar feels like he was created like in a laboratory. it's
Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar, you could swap out Dolph Lundgren and put Brock Lesnar in Rocky 4, and he would still fit the same mold of that machine.
And he would have killed Apollo Creed too.
But yeah, that's what Brock Lesnar was. See, like, he came out, and I remember, I was like, man, they really pushing him strong. But the way they did it, he was just wrecking everybody. And he looked good. And Brock is an underrated seller.
Yeah.
Brock will sell for you, especially, if the situation is right, he will sell for you and make you look good just as much as he's going to beat you up.
Yeah, but it's just like also like it's like just. I mean, also like just the way after the shooting star, but should still finish the match. It's just incredible.
But yeah, that match was great, despite that botched shooting star press.
But still, my immortal moment is a crimson masked Vince McMahon with an iron rod emerging from the ring apron, and in this fantastic no disqualification match with Hulk Hogan of Who Created Hulkamania. Vince doing the leg drop on Hogan from the ladder on the commentary. This
Crazy.
this is maybe I think it's also my top 3 like no disqualification match. Like both bled like pigs.
And the storyline build up was really good. Because it played into their history.
Yeah.
Vince McMahon would say, I made Hulk Hogan. And Hulk Hogan's like, no, Hulkamania has been around since AWA days. And that back and forth, the steroid trial, all that stuff played into the storyline, and it felt legit.
Yes.
And even considering that after this, we got to the Mr. America stuff, and then Hogan just leaves, and Vince is like, yeah, he's done. And like they still had issues after.
Yeah, it's
yes, the video packages were amazing.
Yeah, this was like, what would the young people say? Cinema.
And again, you got an appearance from Roddy Piper, and that was like they brought Roddy Piper in.
Yeah, and also I really enjoyed, of course, that because the thing is, like with modern because a lot of modern audiences at that point, just knew Roddy Piper from the nostalgia pop, like as a good guy. Of course, he hates fucking Hogan. Of course, he attacks Hogan.
Yeah, and it's like, man, we never got a Hogan Roddy Piper WrestleMania match. That should have been WrestleMania 1.
Do you have to say that the Roddy Piper versus Hogan matches at WCW were underrated?
It's just the Starrcade match.
It's
the Halloween Havoc cage match was just bleh. That match was awful.
I do have to say that, I mean, the fake Sting fan, etc. But out of nowhere, Randy Savage hit it down from the top of the cage.
What's up, Biggie Shaq? We are talking Hulk Hogan versus Vince McMahon, WrestleMania 19.
And I am the Durek Wins. What up, my G?
But yeah, like I said, that is always, when it comes to the Vince McMahon, you know what to expect from his matches. No DQ, you're gonna get blood and stuff. But he always, he just, when you really think about it, he over delivers.
Yeah, and it's just like, when you go, we're also gonna talk about it later. The older he got, and the more perverse he got, the more entertaining he got. Yeah.
That spot was insane.
I think this year also for Halloween we should talk about all the Halloween Havocs.
Oh man.
Yeah.
But yeah, that spot was insane, man. And when it comes to Vince, like him and Hogan went out there and they just put on a highly entertaining no DQ match.
Absolutely, and that's...
and 20 years in the making was the tagline. So they really paid off that storyline.
WrestleMania 19 just so good.
And it was WrestleMania 19 at the time was pretty much the end of Stone Cold Steve Austin. And nobody would have thought that. He just came back after the whole situation from last year. Mm. And he gets to have the final match at the time against The Rock.
Yeah,
and this is the story
that The Rock never beat him. That The Rock never beat him. So they're also the just the setup. The setup for the matches was so good.
Yeah, all the matches set up was fantastic. And I look at this as the true conclusion of the Attitude Era, even though the Attitude Era ended 2 years prior. But with Rock more going into Hollywood and Austin retiring, this is like the end of the era for that particular. Because
it truly feels like that WrestleMania 20 ushered in a new era, and the tagline, where it all begins again. The whole pay-per-view really feels like it, and also bringing back,
bringing back Shawn Michaels come back the same show Austin has to retire. So it's like you start with 14 with Shawn have to step away and Austin being the champ, and now Shawn comes back and Austin has to go.
Yeah.
It's crazy how things started and ended with that Attitude Era.
It truly is. It truly is.
So yeah, WrestleMania 19 is so good, and I even liked some of the undercard matches, the tag title match, three-way match with the world's greatest tag team, Los Guerreros and Benoit. And,
it's just very
Rhino.
smooth. It's one of the WrestleManias. I mean, usually like in the Undertaker matches, like my toilet break match, like very early on already.
Yeah, Victoria and Trish had a pretty decent match.
Exactly. So otherwise, it's really one of these WrestleManias where you can just smoothly watch through and you're not getting disappointed.
You know, and then Matt Hardy and Rey Mysterio had a fun opener. So, yeah, WrestleMania 19 is just so good.
And WrestleMania 20, the John Cena nightmare begins.
WrestleMania 20.
It's like I said the last time. I still think that every Jubileum WrestleMania should be held at the Madison Square Garden, and to go back from WrestleMania where it all begins again, so fantastic. Then at this point, also the decision to bring back the Hall of Fame as a yearly thing. It's an emotional roller coaster, right? You know, I binge watched like WrestleMania 14 to 26 the last week. After WrestleMania 20, I had to get a break because I had tears in my eyes. I was crying. The Hall of Fame introduction really got me. You know, yeah. Bobby Heenan no longer with us. And a lot of people still alive back then, of course, like Harley Race being there. Superstar Billy Graham. You know, the whole thing. You know, you had Big John Studd, who was sadly dead at that point. But otherwise, except for him, of course, and JYT, the Chunky Hot Dog, that everybody was still around. You know, of course, Don Morocco being the magnificent Don Morocco, not The Rock, because that nickname was passed on. Greg the Hammer Valentine, Tito Santana, Sergeant Slaughter, yeah, Bobby Heenan, Harley Race, Jesse the Body Ventura, Superstar Billy Graham. You know, when you have like this lineup where nowadays they probably regret it because each of them could have been a headliner to go in of the Hall of Fame in the future. That, you know, when you have like this headline, Tito Santana and Greg the Hammer Valentine feel like choppers compared to like everybody else that is like it's just, yeah. And also like Harley Race still being alive. It's like this is like really where like I really got emotional. And of course, the other thing that of course gets you emotional, like, is my immortal moment. Of course, Eddie and Chris celebrating together.
Yeah, that was it may have been tainted over the course because of what happened in 2007, but when you look at that moment, it was the payoff of their long journey throughout wrestling.
Yeah, it's it's just like, you know, this just really got me. Also, of course, we're gonna talk 2007 also later, because of course, like, I also have like a very personal story like with that. Because I you know, Chris Benoit was just one of these wrestlers who really felt real. And the other thing, but I'm gonna talk about that later, because, you know, that thing takes me back to WCW, of course. But yeah, my favorite match also, like, you know, Chris Benoit defeating the Odds, going against Triple H and Shawn Michaels. You know, this really feels, even though of course he didn't have the champion at that point, it really feels like with this year almost, when you have like Bianca Belair and of course like Io Sky as the underdog and Rhea Ripley, like basically where everybody thinks it's between Rhea and Bianca. And it's like the same here, you know, when they probably also want to recreate maybe like one of these moments, because they can't show this moment again, which I still think so much time happened, you can show it. Everybody knows that what Chris Benoit did was horrible. But yeah, we're gonna talk about that later, of course. But the match is just so fucking good.
It was really good, man. You know, when it comes to this show, and I got all the DVD sets, of WrestleManias and stuff, and like you said, the Hall of Fame speeches were phenomenal, and just hearing those guys tell their stories, and it's really like satisfying to hear those guys talk about the people they work with, and the matches they had and the moments they made in their careers. So the Hall of Fame really kickstarted what eventually us fans wanted to hear from the people being inducted.
It's almost sad that a lot of fantastic legends were already introduced, like in the 90s, to like very little fanfare. For example, like Gorilla Monsoon was like introduced like in the early 90s. That but yeah, it's so good that brought it back, and it's even better that it's still going on. It's just it's so important to celebrate this. And this is like also one of the good things that Triple H is in charge, because he is somebody who truly loves wrestling, who is a wrestling historian.
Yeah.
So
and as far as the show, I thought it was a nice celebration of the 20th event. There was some really good matches on here, and a bunch of multi-man matches.
Yeah. There's I also noted, I don't know what is sadder, Brock versus Goldberg or how small The Rock is.
Brock versus Goldberg was a complete waste of time. They did all that build up.
Yeah.
And everybody knew Goldberg was leaving. But then when Brock said, "I'm leaving too," I'm like, what the fuck?
It's only the audience has a party, and this is the only thing that makes the match
and they were cheering for Austin, who was the referee.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a horrible match per se. It's just a very unnecessary match and a very.
Come on, they stalled for like 5 minutes, man.
I know, but it's like, but it's not like. I think the match itself gets too much hate, but it's just a very sad situation. But like the really sad thing is like The Rock trying to be a serious actor in Hollywood, and he's so fucking small. He's like he's a pebble. He's not a rock.
It is what it is. And one thing about Austin, he has regretted how he handled that situation. But yeah, and this match was built up so well. Like Goldberg getting cost the Royal Rumble due to Brock, and then Goldberg interfering into the Brock match with Eddie Guerrero, which a fantastic match, by the way. Like that No Way Out match between Brock and Eddie was just fantastic and very emotional. But to get what we got, they could have at least went out there and give us a short 6-minute match where they just throw bombs at each other. Goldberg wins. That's it.
Or just like they did it when Goldberg come back. Like
the matches we got later on should have been what we got here.
Yeah.
And I think they knew that. That's why they wanted to have those matches so they can make up for what happened at WrestleMania 20.
Yeah.
Kurt Angle and Eddie Guerrero. That match was phenomenal. And I liked the build-up, with Kurt Angle turning heel on Eddie, and, Eddie having to prove himself that he can defeat an Olympic gold medalist. And this really kickstarted their rivalry in this year. And it's like, man, I love the rise of Eddie Guerrero.
And I also love basically it's also a storytelling, the ankle lock and how Eddie outwitted Kurt.
Yes, that the storyline of that was great. Which is, again, it's the little things. Eddie knows that he has to find a way to counteract the ankle lock, and by unloosening his boot, Angle being so aggressive with it, got caught off guard, and Eddie was able to win.
And this is how you create unique matches that you remember, because this is not a run-of-the-mill match, and it's like you say, this was where there were like contenders where like it's tough to pick like a favorite match out of these.
I even
I mean, even like Christian, like in Chris Jericho.
I was just about to say Christian versus Chris Jericho was an underrated match. Like I really enjoyed that match.
And otherwise, I would also have to say that, you know, like I say, of course, if you can, you want to have The Rock on the card, even though he was so small at this point, and the goatee didn't do anything for him. But I think that the Randy Orton versus Mick Foley hardcore match at Backlash would have deserved to be on the WrestleMania card.
Yes, I agree.
Because that was the match that really made Randy Orton. As much as later on the Edge match really made Edge against Mick Foley. The hardcore match.
It really elevated Orton. And this is a tribute to Foley. And it's that mentality that Terry Funk had. That's why I like when Paul Heyman talked about Terry Funk when he was in ECW. Funk was I can make him. And Foley had that same mentality. He made The Rock and he made Triple H into bona fide main eventers during their rise. Yeah. So Foley just has that knack of anybody he works with, he can help elevate.
Also, in my personal opinion, Evolution so much more important than the Generation X.
Yes. And at the time, I hated Evolution because that's when Triple H was dominating so much. And the whole thing with the Booker T match from the year before, like, just soured on me. I was like, and this 2004 is when I discovered TNA. So I was just happy to discover something outside the WWE.
Yeah.
Sadly, the only bad thing about TNA is Jeff fucking Jarrett. It's like you go from Triple H to Jeff Jarrett, the guy who hurt WCW.
Never threw a dime. We're gonna talk about one of the Graham brothers, of course, also later in the Hall of Fame.
So, like I said, my dislike for Evolution was because of Triple H's dominance. But looking back at it, it was an important group that not only did their thing as a modern version of the Four Horsemen, but it elevated Randy Orton and Batista.
And it made Ric Flair again, and not being a broken man after WCW. Like,
yes. So looking back at it, Evolution, and I loved that theme song. It's just,
I mean,
real good, man. Motorhead did their thing with that theme.
Yeah.
So, but that main event of WrestleMania 20 was just, like I said, it's a match that I watch. You can't help but get emotional. And it was a great payoff for all the hard work that Benoit did for so many years.
Yes.
And it's a shame that he got flushed down the toilet due to what happened in 2007.
Yes. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that later because, like I said, I have my opinions on it. That I really think that. Yeah, we're gonna talk about it later. It's like wherever Jeff Jarrett was also when I stopped caring about the Intercontinental title, like back then.
Yeah.
When he was the Intercontinental champion, and it's just Jeff Jarrett. He doesn't has it. He just doesn't has it.
And I'm going on the tangent, but what really pissed me off is when he beat Monty Brown, when everybody in the world wanted to see Monty Brown beat him. And this was when Monty Brown could have been their star.
Yeah, it is like the thing is where, at least, with somebody else that really draws, it's like, okay, I get it like that. But him just being like a mid-carder that has an iron grip on like the main event, it's
crazy. And then last thing to note of WrestleMania 20, the return of the Phenom Dark Side Undertaker, the Death Man. He fought Kane and beat Kane again at WrestleMania. Like, damn, Kane, you can't beat him. And thankfully, this match was shorter than their match at WrestleMania 14. Yeah. But it was cool to see him modify his look.
Absolutely, that was.
But now we go into WrestleMania 21. WrestleMania goes Hollywood.
The trailers are off.
The trailers are classics, man. Like the whole Pulp Fiction thing with Booker T and Eddie. You know, Undertaker being Dirty Harry.
Yeah. And Batista, like, already, like, he did a fantastic acting in there, you know, to play Dump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The guitar shots were fun, but they wasn't drawing dimes.
Yeah, it's everybody can do a guitar shot. Like, it's...
I mean, Honky Tonk Man was doing the guitar shots in the 80s.
But yeah, it's, of course, like, you have Eddie versus... It's sad, of course, that it was the last WrestleMania of Eddie.
Yeah.
But it was good that his final WrestleMania match was against Rey Mysterio.
Yeah, for them to have that feud in 2005, and it gave us Dominic.
Yeah.
The feud did give us Dominic,
Yeah.
and it kind of paid off later on.
Yeah, it's still nothing beats the Halloween Havoc match.
Nothing.
No. Which we're gonna talk about, of course, in October. This is just a Halloween Havoc match was just probably also one of the top 5 wrestling matches in history. But WrestleMania 21 was really good. You know, like for me, the immortal moment, of course, is now in retrospective the Eddie Lowrider entrance. Because this is just how you remember him, and this is until the streak was broken by Brock Lesnar. This year was where it was the most in danger. Back then, I thought it was the wrong decision to not like let Randy Orton get over Undertaker, like especially with the Legend Killer gimmick.
The RKO counting was so good, so smooth.
But you know, also like looking at it now, Randy didn't need that win. He became who he is by his own, so he didn't need to. Maybe breaking the streak would have even hindered him, like to become like the main eventer.
I will agree. They could have did a better job with Chavo.
Yeah, especially like the Ray angle, like we talk about it at WrestleMania 22. It just. I mean, of course, it's nice to have like remembering Eddie, but then Chavo should have been like pushed, and
it is what it is. But we could say a lot of things about WWE misusing stuff.
But also, like first Money in the Bank, still felt very fresh.
To me, I have issues with Money in the Bank overall. Because now it's just played out to the point where I don't care about who wins Money in the Bank because there ain't no guarantee that they're going to get a strong push.
Yeah. I
mean, for fuck's sakes, Jack Swagger won Money in the Bank, won the championship, and where did that go to? No.
Because he didn't have a bill. Actually, I have a noted later that personally I think that Jack Swagger got way too much hate for nothing. He was just pushing the situation that he was not ready for.
He never was ready.
I still think
he's another one that's just a mid-carder at best.
I still think that you could have gotten way more out of him.
Not for me though.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first Money in the Bank was great.
No. It's like
no.
There's not. You can't name 5 matches that were better than the one at Halloween Havoc.
They had a whole 4 or 5 matches in 2005, plus whatever they had on TV, and none of them are better than Halloween Havoc.
Yeah, it's like that. It's almost, and like I say, it's like just in general, name 5 wrestling matches that are better than that match.
It's hard.
It's hard.
There's a couple matches you can name. Like one match on this show is damn near close to it, and that's Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels.
Oh, that's
a phenomenal match.
That's actually my favorite match of the card.
Yeah, because it's to me match of the night.
It is.
Like I watched that match so many times, and they just kept getting better and better each minute go by.
And
That
also,
match, Shawn and Kurt really had great chemistry throughout this match.
okay, also what I've written down, of course, for the first time, what we're gonna hear for a lot of future Wrestlemanias, in my notes, fuck Cena, and that JBL was such an overperforming heel at that point, and he saved SmackDown.
See, it's funny you say that. JBL getting pushed to the title so quickly turned me off of SmackDown, because I felt that when they broke up the APA and he turned heel, I was like, oh, I can deal with this new look of JBL and them feeding into that whole financial background that he had. But then when he attacked Eddie Guerrero and got the title shot, I was like, wait a minute, now that's a bit quick. You know, because I felt like he could have built himself up to be a main event, a mid-card heel, and get to the main event.
But he didn't have any other heels they needed to do.
But that was the problem. Because Brock Lesnar left, they had to push JBL quickly. But I just felt like, man, he just coming off the APA, where he was nothing more than a tag guy, and automatically he's getting main event spot. So that kind of irked me a bit. And looking back at it, like, yeah, his main event heel run was very good. He had great promos. He played the cowardly heel really well.
Yes.
Which is something that wrestlers really don't know how to do. Because they're so used to being either cool heels or badass heels, but never cowardly heels. And I thought JBL played it so good that when I look back at it, I was like, man, I really did miss out a lot on what he did at SmackDown. Because I was very apprehensive on them pushing him so quick and then taking the belt off Eddie, which I came to find out that Eddie was feeling so much pressure being champion that he didn't want to be the champion no more. So I remember being mad that Eddie lost the belt to JBL.
Yeah, it's also interesting when you think about, everybody's always like, oh, GBL, like the bully, etc. From this point on, I mean, I hate Cena, but he put Cena over. And later, when you see how he put other over with the US Championship, with the Intercontinental Championship, because he was like still a name that gave prestige to any title. So actually, he was used to put a lot of people over.
His match with Cena at Backlash was better than the WrestleMania match.
Yes. Which is actually, from that time period, a lot of Backlash matches actually...
Backlash was better than WrestleMania most of the time.
Because it's almost like at WrestleMania we have like a regular match and the Backlash we like, then it gets getting personal.
Yeah. And Backlash always ends up being better than WrestleMania.
Even also when you look about it, of course, with the card with Batista versus Triple H, the Vengeance match is the best one. Like the Hell in a Cell.
Yeah. That was their best match.
Yeah.
But overall, this was a fun WrestleMania.
Yeah, except of course for Akebono versus Big Show.
Yeah, that I don't even think of that match. I think that match didn't even exist. You know, so that stuck out like a sore thumb, and it was the weakest point in the match.
Yeah, but it's a really good WrestleMania, of course, except for fuck Cena.
and then Booker T wins the Intercontinental title in the Battle Royal that wasn't even on the main card. Yeah. I felt like, come on, how Booker T go from main event or being in the title match 2 years ago to just being in the dark match?
Which is also, sadly, was always a strength by Booker T that you could put him in any situation, he would just swim.
So, we just started the fuck jump. What? Go ahead.
Just one more thing, like, of course, WrestleMania 21, I wanted to mention that also, like, Paul Orndorff going to the Hall of Fame, Roddy Piper, Jimmy Hart, Bob Orton, Hulk Hogan, the immortal one.
That was a good class with Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper.
And Hogan and the Sheik. And Nikolai Volkov, Paul Orndorff, like so fantastic. Also, like here, you can see. I think at WrestleMania 26, then we're gonna finally see that they realized, hey, we're gonna run out of people to put in the Hall of Fame. We gotta narrow it down a bit. But also, like here, except for Bob Orton Jr., and he's still deserving in the Hall of Fame, but everybody else could have been a headliner.
So yeah, that was a great Hall of Fame, man. But yeah, WrestleMania 22, I know 21 was the beginning of the fuck John Cena stage for you. WrestleMania 22, you thinking Triple H is gonna save us.
Yes,
Triple H is gonna get the belt. After years of us hating on Triple H for the reign of terror.
I was like, I was literally there and just like hoping, like it's like get the shovel out of the shed.
We're like, Triple H, we need you to do one more burial. We need you to bury Cena.
Yeah, it. I do have to say, despite Cena going over, and I was just shocked. I was like, literally, like that one fan in the audience was like, "What the fuck just happened?" Like this rubbed me so way. Otherwise, I have to say, it was a fantastic WrestleMania. Jean-Paul Levesque, who did not get over against Alex Wright.
No, Alex Wright said nope. Saturday Night Fever, baby. But yeah, everybody was wanting Triple H to beat Cena. And it's funny because Cena got the title last year. And by the summer of 2005, he was getting booed against Chris Jericho. Later on, he fought Kurt Angle. The fans wanted Kurt to win. So it's like, man, you're already in your first title reign and you getting booed by the fans. This ain't going well so far. And he already lost the belt to Edge and got it back 3 weeks later, which pissed a lot of people off.
To quote my notes, I think this is one of the best WrestleMania cards, but fuck Cena. Fuck Cena.
The card itself is really good.
Yeah, and also, like, from the note, if Mark Henry already had the 3-6 Mafia theme at that point, he would have broken the streak.
And Mark Henry was believable at beating Undertaker.
He was, but when I watched it, and I ordered this as a pay-per-view back in the day, I thought the streak was in danger.
He was believable. He could have ended the streak.
Absolutely. And actually, I think that Mark Henry would have been not only believable, but I think that he could have turned it into something that already brought him to the position that he rightfully was in later with the Hall of Pain earlier.
The more I look at it, I was like, man, I wish he came up with the Hall of Pain a lot earlier.
Yes.
Because that was his definitive run. And it sucked that it came later in his career.
Yes, because here, beating the streak, and would have said later, I just introduced you, the streak is over, you're introduced to the Hall of Pain. At that point, this would have been what SmackDown actually needed.
Yeah, because they were lacking in some heels.
Yeah,
they needed somebody like Mark Henry to be that new dominant heel.
So I think that was actually like a bad decision at that point, I would say. I mean, of course, they still milked the streak for a very long time, but I think that Mark Henry should have gotten over at this point.
Now, we mentioned a little bit of it for the last WrestleMania, but Rey Mysterio being the one to win the title from Kurt Angle with Randy Orton involved in the match. And I love Rey Mysterio.
Yes. All the love, all the respect for Rey Mysterio.
And it was a genuine moment, but it definitely felt exploitive, especially when they was using Eddie's name throughout the entire build up to it.
And even though the crowd cheered for it, people turned on Ray so fast, especially how he was booked as a champion.
They put him up against Kane, they put him up against Big Show, they put him up against JBL. You already doing him dirty by putting him up against Giants.
Yeah, then we all love Ray. We all love Ray. Trust me. It's just the way that they booked him in this position. It was like he felt so weak as champion, and it really felt like, you know, immediately after WrestleMania, it really felt like that they gave a title to a Make-A-Wish kid.
Dang.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
That's harsh.
I know it's harsh, but the way they booked him was just so horrible, and he could have been booked believable as a champion, but they didn't do it because Vince was never sold on him as a champion.
Yeah, it really sucked for Rey Mysterio, man. And it's not saying like his title defense was the match against Randy Orton, and while the one night stand 2 match wasn't spectacular, it had a bad finish. I liked him versus Saki.
Yeah. I actually was the finish. I really enjoyed the match, and it was. And the one night stand 2 is amazing. And I mean, talking about WrestleMania 22, you have to talk one night stand 2 because Mr. Money in the Bank RVD, my favorite Money in the Bank match.
That, and you know what's funny? Like, Ric Flair was in this match.
Yeah, of course he was.
And it's like, man, even at that time, it's like, what can Rick do in a match type like this?
Well, he can take a fucking bump from a ladder.
If he took that bump 20 years later, it's been the end of life for him.
It's.
But he went out there and he overperformed for what he can do.
Yes, absolutely.
But Rob was the right person to win.
Exactly, and there was still hope that they're gonna do the right thing with ECW, but we're also gonna talk about that later, obviously.
Of course, you mentioned earlier Booker T and Boogeyman.
Which
that was nothing more than an attraction match.
I know, but this match should have been one of the matches, when you look at it, one of the worst WrestleMania matches. But it was not, because Booker and Shamel sold it so fucking well. And also, you know, the guy like from Tough Enough who became like the Boogeyman.
He's a great guy.
He's a great guy, and he really made the gimmick work.
Oh yeah, he sold it.
He was given a shit sandwich, and he made it a delicious dish out of it.
That's why whenever I see photos with him and the Godfather and his Papa Shango makeup, and like just imagine them in 1992, Boogeyman and Papa Shango. Vince would run that.
There's only one person who no-sold the Boogeyman at WrestleMania 23. Donald Trump.
Oh boy.
He no-sold the Boogeyman.
Now the Edge versus Mick Foley match, we mentioned it earlier, and again, it's a match that elevated Edge because
my favorite
he had
one
that 3-week title reign, which at the time I was like, all right, fine, you got Edge as champion, let's see how you do it. And then he holds the belt for 3 weeks and loses it back to Cena, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. That shows you that they were all in on Cena, that no matter what.
This match saved Edge's career.
It really elevated him.
Yeah, and this is my favorite match on the card. Mick Foley takes all the punishment, puts Edge and leads to some punishment, and he still had this rub in him.
It's crazy. Like Edge suffered the burns. They both suffered those burns through that table. But
and
He went face first into the flames.
And then when you think about later, also the fantastic one that had the one night stand too.
Yeah, the tag match.
The tag match.
So, yeah, that.
And Edge's best cover in history against Bueller.
Yeah, but yeah, this match really elevated Edge, and like you said, he needed it.
Yes.
After that thing with John Cena, he needed that elevation. But I'm surprised this is your match of the night and not Shawn versus Vince.
That's my immortal moment. The McMahon family prayer. Hallelujah!
And once again, it's like going into this, I'm like, man, Shawn fought Kurt Angle last year. He had the triple threat match the year before, the match with Jericho, and now he's working with Vince. Like,
yeah,
and also Shawn knows how to work match.
And also, I think one of the, which also could have been very much an immortal moment, is Shawn being on the ladder, getting off the ladder, everybody boos, and it brings out a bigger ladder. And it's the elbow drop. That was really, when I watched it back, like, I don't know how late it was here in the morning. But of course, like, because I saw it live, because you had to with the pay-per-view. And I was just like, oh, come on. Like you do, like, then he brought up the bigger ladder, like, woo!
Hey, like, let me get something bigger for y'all to cheer.
And also, of course, the great thing about it is, like, Vince put Shawn over, but at Backlash he didn't put God over.
It's funny how we had this match, and then it leads to the whole Shawn and God versus Vince and Shane.
Yeah,
the most absurd match ever.
Wrestling Bios did a fantastic video.
Yeah, he did, and it's like, damn, Vince, how low can you go? Vince will stoop to the lowest level to get a reaction out of the crowd. And like I said, love him or hate him, you're always gonna remember.
And at that point, I think that was like in his 60s, and this was like Vince at his most swollest. Like, he was a fucking machine. Like you said, like the McMahon family prayer. Like you said in McMahon family prayer, it's like that God is envious because, like, no 60-year-old should have like a Herculean body like he does. I mean, like the whole promos, also with Shane when Vince was just out there, and what is like the.
It's crazy.
Like I said, it's like the fruit of my loins.
And saying to the son, like,
he's like, what the fuck?
Oh shit.
I think this is like, when you watch like the Netflix McMahon documentary, I think this is like one of the few interesting parts about it. With Shane, basically, when Shane wanted to get something over, and Vince, like, here's a knife, like, you have to kill me. And like, I think a lot
it felt like he meant that. He meant that personally. Like, you want to get this over, kill me. Then you can take over.
And when you watch like Vince in this era, especially with the Shawn feud with Vince versus God, that you can really see that Shane are probably some things like no idea what happens.
It's crazy, man. When you look back at it, and all this did, and think about it. It started out Vince versus Shawn, then the whole thing with God, and it led to the reunion of DX. And then Vince and Shane versus DX. It's like,
and also, like, it's still one of the moments where I was like, when I was watching live on pay-per-view, the handicap match, Shane and Vince and Big Show versus DX in the cage.
Oh my god,
and Vince got a huge. They shoved in between Big Show's ass and.
Hey, Vince will do anything.
Yeah,
he will do anything.
I still also think that the Kiss My Ass Club angle could have been used as a longer storytelling device, even like over a decade.
I don't know if people want to see Vince's cheeks every day. The William Regal one is still the most hilarious one of all of them.
Yeah, it's just like, how Vince put over his ass.
Yeah, every time I see that thing with William Regal, you can't help but laugh because it's just ridiculous.
And of course, how Regal sells it.
Yeah, man. But like I said, Vince he's gonna do everything he can to sell his product.
Yeah. Oh, but I do have to say, you know what? What got me? I know he's your hero, but Bret Hart is a fucking crybaby for refusing not to come out in the Hall of Fame evening, like in the show. Fucking pussy.
Hey, you're entitled to your opinion. I felt the same way. Like, man, come on, you could have came out there
because it's for the fans and it's But of course, killer lineup. Of course, sadly, Eddie Guerrero being introduced way too soon because he passed away. But Bret, he's rightfully in the Hall of Fame. But I thought he was not a good sport, like for not showing up.
I mean, do it for the fans, but at the same time, remember they was gonna do the DVD on him to shit on him.
Yes.
Called Screw, and he had to intervene and say, "Nah, y'all not gonna do that shit," because he saw that Warrior DVD.
Yeah, that one was.
No. So there was still some ill will there, and Bret should have at least done right for the fans and to show up there. Yeah. But like I said,
Mean Gene also, of course, Sherry.
Oh man, Sherry.
Tony Atlas, rightfully so.
I want to say the anniversary passed a few days ago of the legendary Hulk Hogan. We coming for you. And Sherry's reaction always gets me laughing.
Yeah.
Sherry, she managed a lot of great wrestlers. But Harlem Heat, they worked so well together.
I know. I had to think about the Colonel.
Man, look, man, Colonel Rob Parker, and I was just looking at the history of the Fullers, the family that he's a part of, and I was like, thank God somebody got the sense to say, let's not pull this angle where he's managing Booker and Steve.
Yeah, and
like they were slaves, like. That shit, I don't know who even thought of it, but thank God they didn't put that shit on TV, because I'm like, come on now.
Who would have thought of him? Only Anderson.
So, when it comes to Robert Fuller, and here's another reason. I don't like Colonel Parker, because he's the reason the Hollywood Blondes broke up, storyline-wise. And I was like, come on, man. Also, you had Brian Pillman and y'all was doing great, and then you joined this guy? Like, come on. But that's all I got to say about Fuller. Overall, WrestleMania 22 was another great show, even if Triple H lost. And we had to endure more team.
Yeah. Which brings me to my first note of WrestleMania 23. Fuck Cena.
Back-to-back years, he beat DX.
Yeah. And
the funny thing is, with that main event match, they did a better job on the Raw afterwards when they went there.
Yeah, the 1 hour one. Yeah,
that was a way better match than WrestleMania.
Still, Shawn Michaels still brings a good match out of him.
The best match for WrestleMania 23, Undertaker Batista. I love that match. They went into it and they're like, man, we in the middle of the fucking card? What?
Favorite match, Undertaker Batista. Because I said that's the only match on the card that made me feel something.
They went out there and said, you put us in the middle of the card. They went and said fuck it, we gonna fucking over-deliver and make y'all follow us.
I absolutely hated WrestleMania 23.
I'm not a fan of the whole Bobby Lashley, Umaga, Donald Trump thing. It has its moments. The match does have its moments. That flat back bump that Umaga took on the outside, brutal.
I mean, apparently they wanted to get, because of course 20th anniversary, they wanted to get Hogan versus the Big Show, but they could not. Which would have been, probably wouldn't have worked so much, but it still would have been at least like an emotional component.
It just wouldn't have worked.
Yeah. Except for when Triple H had it.
Yeah, when Triple H had it, it was the #1 belt.
As it should. It's the big gold.
But yeah, I wasn't a fan of. By this point, Money in the Bank was starting to wear thin on me.
Yes.
The first two was good, but by this point, it was starting to wear thin.
And WrestleMania 23 suffered a lot from young talent not being ready, or just didn't, because it was so. MVP right now is way more over than it was back in the day. But also like Carlito, Mr. Kennedy, they didn't feel like a menace to the main event at this point.
Whereas CM Punk was getting cheers, he wasn't ready, but yet the fans loved him.
Exactly. Shout out to Pepsi Phil.
And again, I mentioned his name earlier, but the ECW Arena Originals versus the New Breed.
Like in my note, ECW was treated like an afterthought.
After One Night Stand 2 and the creation of the WWECW, I knew it was nowhere going to be close to what ECW represents. And it was an instant failure.
Yeah. Just imagine, it was like, or even with Bobby Lashley, because back in the day he was so fucking boring. He was pushed too fast. If they would just have given like a proper manager and did not introduce him as a face, but give him like a hurt business heel-like persona, he would have been over immediately.
You know what I saw in Bobby Lashley? I saw their attempt to do another Brock Lesnar.
Yes, but it just didn't work, and the sad thing was really Bobby Lashley. You could see that he has everything except for charisma at that point yet. But they could have, and it's so sad. When you have like MVP and Bobby Lashley, who just later with the Hurt Business or the Hurt.
You know who had charisma, and they completely neutered him. I'm gonna call him the alpha male Monty Brown, because I refuse to call him Marcus Quan. He's Monty Brown, and that dude had charisma. He had personality. TNA promos off the charts. And when he come to WWE and they rebranded him as Marcus Corban, but they kept the alpha male name, they didn't let him cut the promos.
And they didn't do him a favor by aligning it with Elijah Burke.
And I like Elijah Burke.
Yeah, but it felt so forced.
Yeah, and it's like, I just hated how they just neutered his personality that he had in TNA. Like, this man could cut promos. It's to me, that was TNA's biggest loss, is just downgrading him and letting him go.
They really should just let Heyman cook.
And like, props to Monty Brown. He stepped away for a good reason. His sister died, and he stepped in to take care of her kids. So, always give him props. He stepped away from wrestling to take care of his sister's kids. So, much respect to that man for doing that. And when he popped up a couple years ago on social media, I was like, oh shit, Monty Brown, and he still got the character down pat. I was like, man, I would love to just see one more run of Monty Brown, man, because he was the guy in TNA for me. But yeah, that Undertaker Batista was just the best match of the entire card.
Yeah.
And they only got 15, 16 minutes. And yet they delivered.
Yeah, it was, absolutely. And because otherwise, it was really, I was so disappointed when I watched this.
Yeah.
First of all, back in the day, 2007.
Yeah, because this
Lucky Me in Austria didn't give a shit about Donald Trump. Like, who cares about Donald Trump? Like, who cares about the guy that was like in Home Alone?
Who's Trump Plaza host the two
exactly.
Wrestlemanias.
So luckily at that point, I barely even knew who he was.
Now he's all over the place.
Yeah, but the redeeming thing about it gave birth. It was the origin of Durek Wins.
Yes, it is. The only thing that came out of it.
Yeah, which is like also one of the few redeeming things about ECW. It was just still best heel, just if Vince McMahon is a heel.
But at the same time, us ECW fans that watched it when it originally aired.
Yeah.
Remember, before it was on TNN Network, we had to stay up to like 2, 3 in the morning just to catch ECW. So it was like, it was no easy task to watch ECW, but we felt happy to catch it. So
yeah, I was only introduced to it later, and I had like been buy the DVDs like to watch it, and I really fell in love with ECW. But it was like, WrestleMania 23 being in 2007. I think it was the 1st of April, and WrestleMania Revenge Tour, the 21st of April in Vienna, I was seeing live the house show. It was a fantastic house show, and RVD Sabu there, so I had like, of course, like I had like Sabu and RVD signs, and RVD pointed at me.
Nice.
Fantastic moment. But it's really, because when you think about it, it was the 21st of April, and I was watching Chris Benoit live, and then 2 months later, like exactly 2 months later,
tragedy happened.
Yeah, it really sucks so much, like on a human level. And what I also hate about it is, and it is a shame that Nancy, woman, fallen angel, is not in the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
I still say that at one point they should introduce the Radicals into the Hall of Fame. Just don't mention Chris Benoit, but the Radicals as a group deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, but not before Nancy is in the fucking Hall of Fame.
I mean, Nancy, even before the late 90s where people saw her more on TV, her work in early WCW, even when she was managing Sandman in ECW, she did phenomenal work. But of course, the work she did with Kevin Sullivan in Florida,
who booked his own divorce.
He booked his own divorce. And when you look at it, it's like, man, why did you do that, Kevin?
It's still, like I said, huge WCW fan. I love to rewatch everything. It really is such a pain because it's really, like I say, and like, so seeing Chris Benoit 2 months before this happened and cheering for him, and having like watched all of this in the past from the WCW days, him being managed by Nancy, marrying Nancy, and this one hit just so fucking close because you're following somebody for the whole career, and also a big fan of his wife, and then this happening is just
they came after wrestling full bore after that incident.
Yeah, it ushered in the fucking PG era.
Yes, and damn, the news outlets, they just this was like their opportunity to really attack.
And this is like fuck the media. And I think we really need to. There are people in the Hall of Fame that are also murderers. It's like I say, I get it that you don't want to have a celebration of Chris Benoit. Like I say, but you can just. He still deserves wrestling wise to be in the Hall of Fame.
It took it early on. Like, after this whole thing and stuff, like, I didn't watch Benoit matches back because of, you see Benoit and you instantly think of the tragedy that happened. But I learned, like, within the year, I'm going to separate the wrestler from the person that took his own family life and ended his life.
Yeah, if there is a hell, the man Chris Benoit is in it. The wrestler Chris Benoit, one of the best who ever like get into the ring, and like I say, he should not go into the Hall of Fame as a single person. But if you put the Radicals in, I think this would be an acceptable solution. It's because it also would a way to bring Perry Saturn in, of course.
And it's good seeing these photos on social media with Perry and Dean together at shows.
Yeah, and Demonenko, of course. Yeah, it's
because Perry went through a rough spell in his own life. Oh
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and also to give like Eddie Guerrero, of course, like a second Hall of Fame ring posthumously. Yeah, but of course, like I said, not before. Nancy should be in the Hall of Fame, even without all of this happening, because she's one of the original Dark Relays.
Yeah, most definitely.
And Kevin Sullivan also should be in the Hall of Fame.
And we lost him last year.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to WrestleMania 24. Now, you talk about them wanting to do Hulk Hogan versus Big Show. WrestleMania 24 give us Big Show versus Floyd Money Mayweather.
Unnecessary.
Not only unnecessary, but not even believable that this little man, who's a great boxer, but this man can beat the Big Show.
Yeah,
you got to have 100 men interfere in the match for you. Like when Yokozuna then beat Undertaker and a whole roster came out to beat. That's what needed to happen in this.
Yeah, and also I get the idea of the name value because Mayweather was huge at that point. However, the book is a face.
I liked it in the build-up when Big Show got on his knees and told him to punch him.
Yeah.
And Floyd legit punched him. And Big Show was fucking heated. Yeah. And they asked him if that was a work or a shoot. But I think it was both. Because Floyd laid it in on him with that punch.
But let's just face it, this is like a two-match card, sort of. It's Pepsi Phil winning the Money in the Bank. And, of course, Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
I did like Edge versus Undertaker. I did like that match.
Like I said, at this point, I just didn't care for Edge. I mean, it's decent and also it's they made the mistake. I think with they made the mistake that Edge lost the Money in the Bank, so it couldn't be streak versus streak.
Yeah.
Then ECW at that point, not even a joke anymore.
WWE ECW was always a joke to me. I never took it serious.
And of course, it's the start of the PG era. It just sucked. it just really sucked. Like at this point, I was not even buying like the PVC, and I was just watching it with friends. Like I said, because the last PVC that I bought was December to December, and I still think WWE owes me for that one to this day. Because I was one of the few thousand stupid people that bought it.
I was smart. I was like, I'm not buying anything of WWE pay-per-views because, like I said, it's ECW, and it's like the TV show was mediocre. So why would I want to buy the pay-per-view?
Yeah, however, like 2008, after WrestleMania came to basically my yard, and after 15th April of 2008 to Linz, which I'm originally from Upper Austria, so that was just like half an hour, like train ride to watch live, and I pre-ordered tickets like the second they came on, so it was like second row, and had the ring in front of me.
Wow.
And saw a young Cody Rhodes.
Super young Cody. This is back when he didn't have knee pads on, so he was bare knees.
I saw Triple H live, and I think I talked about this in the future. I wanna say sorry to Mickie James because she came in and there was silence because nobody cared for women's wrestling, except for one person who shouted, "Just get naked." It was me.
But I do want to say, women's wrestling from the Attitude Era up to this point was never presented as serious.
Yeah, and but I still have to say everybody was silent, and just me in the second row, Mickie James in front of me, and I was just screaming, "Just get naked." She looked at me with, if looks could kill. If looks could kill.
I like that movie, man.
If it wouldn't be Mickie James, but Dr. D, Dr. Schultz, Dr. Schultz, I would be dead.
But yeah, like women's wrestling was never presented serious. You had some great wrestlers like Trish, who got better each year. They brought in Jazz and completely wasted her. Like, I love Jazz, especially the more you saw her, and like she could have been something more. Lita was fine, but it just was never taken serious.
Yeah, I mean, I have the wrong costume to talk about. Because we know that Vince probably got a lot of tail, and redistributed it to others.
But anyway, like, women's wrestling was really never taken seriously until the NXT Black and Gold, and then they came up and started taking it more serious.
Which we're gonna talk about next week, of course, more also serious women wrestling. But back then, a young me, very much disrespectful against women's wrestlers. So, Mickie James, if you listen to this, I'm very sorry.
Hopefully she accepts that apology.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Shawn Michaels Flair.
Yes.
The build up to that match.
I'm sorry, I love you.
Was really good, you know. And to be honest, Flair should have never came out of retirement after, because this was a great storyline for him to go out.
I mean, it's easy to say.
But he needed the money.
It's easy to say when you don't have a Ric Flair bank account.
And divorces was happening, so he's like, I need some money, man.
Yes. Yeah, so, like I say, in a perfect world, should have never returned from retirement. But, you know, when you need the money, I understand it. And, it's...
But I will say, this match was great. It was emotional. But it led to some great storylines afterwards. Shawn Michaels and Batista having an issue with this match. Yeah. Jericho weaseling his way into it. And then it led to the Jericho-Shawn feud, with Jericho becoming serious. And it's like, this match launched Shawn Michaels in 2 rivalries with Jericho and Batista, and it was great storytelling.
It was basically the only thing what you could really watch at that point.
Pretty much, because I remember watching the Shawn Michaels Jericho stuff. And then after SummerSlam, when Jericho accidentally decked Shawn's wife, I was like, man, this is the best thing on TV right now.
Yeah, it's like, Chris Jericho coming back at this point.
He came back, he's stale, because he came back as the same Save Me Y2J and stuff, but then he really didn't add nothing to his character.
But it was still Chris Jericho, and at this point,
I felt like that Shawn Michaels situation made him reinvent himself, and it was so good, and he needed it.
Absolutely, yeah. But sadly, also I have to say, Randy Orton, now a legend in his own right. Was he ever really a good champion? It was always better in the chase.
I felt like when he was a heel, he could have been really good, because I felt like it was around late 2007, 2008 when he really developed that Viper gimmick. And that's when the people really took to him. When he was punting people's heads and all that stuff.
WCW Jericho is best Jericho.
Yeah. That 98 version of Jericho was great. But when it comes to Randy Orton, I felt like this period from 2007 to 2010 was probably his best run.
Let's call it at least it isn't Cena title run.
But it always lead back to Cena somehow, somewhere. But yeah, I like the Undertaker Edge, me personally. And Shawn versus Flair was the best match. But this was a middle of the road WrestleMania for me.
It's I think this is like this is basically the start of the PG era to a lot of lackluster WrestleManias that we're gonna talk about. Which is gonna be a chore to get through some, but we're gonna do it.
To be honest, after WrestleMania 26, I kind of tuned out.
Me same.
and it's funny, I bought the WrestleMania when The Rock versus Cena happened, the first match. I've never watched it because I was like, it's just not compelling enough for me to watch it.
I still haven't watched those WrestleManias, so it's gonna be a first time for me. It's just like it's Cena, so it's like, okay.
Yeah, but it's just that I really started to tune out of wrestling more and more.
Exactly, because it felt like with The Undertaker retiring Shawn. I mean, of course, they did a blade with Triple H, etc., with Shawn being the guest referee. But at this point, it really felt like that this is not my wrestling anymore.
No. Like
the PG era, just Cena. And I didn't watch it at that point. Of course, you sort of follow it. Not social media back in the days, but back in the days still, some web forums. And also like later, when Cena, of course, and here we can talk about a proper burial, when he buried the Nexus. And it was really this, it's like, good thing I'm not watching anymore.
What's even messed up? I was a fan of Bryan Danielson due to his Ring of Honor and independent stuff. And when they brought him in and paired him up with the fucking Miz, I was like, no.
I also don't care about the Miz. It's
me neither. And the fact that he's been in the company for so long, it's like, come on, man.
I mean, he's a solid worker and everything. I just don't care about him.
What's the name alone? It's like, come on, the Miz.
Not even R-Truth can make the Miz interesting.
And you talk about a legend. R-Truth, no matter how he's portrayed, he still somehow find a way to make it entertaining.
I still wish we would have gotten like Ron Killings, like NWA champion type.
Yes. I want to see Ron the Truth Killings.
Yes, that.
But going on to WrestleMania 25, another one-match show in another situation where Triple H was like, the title match go last, and it ended up hurting that match.
Yeah. It was like also like here, you know, back in the day, we watched Pride. We watched Pride here, and also the K1, the kickboxing. K1 was like huge here.
Yes, Biggie, we still going on WrestleMania 25 with one more WrestleMania to talk about after that.
And all the rest WrestleManias gonna be next week. But since we got a little break at WrestleMania 24, my notes at WrestleMania 25 say again, fuck Cena.
And he finds ways to win matches, and it's like, come on.
And oh boy, Santina Maria.
See, I was like, and again, this is why women's wrestling wasn't respected because of shit like this.
Yeah, it's
like, man, somebody get Jim Cornette on the phone and yell at Santino.
I do have to say, like I said, it's a one-match card. Of course, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels. However, my immortal moment is Christian coming back.
Oh, Christian.
Which I still think they should have not debuted him on ECW, but this should have been his actual debut.
You know what my immortal moment is for this? Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
He still got it, like the way he performed from the top ropes, like.
Bro, it was like he found the fountain of youth. And while, you know, Piper and Snooker just looked like death. He looked like death. But Steamboat, he was like, yo, this man's still moving. He jumping off the top rope. Arm drags was crisp. It was like, yo, this is the reason why we got the Steamboat Jericho one-on-one at back.
Exactly. Yeah, and he is, of course, like, is also they introduced him to the Hall of Fame, like, in this year. But he could fucking go. And like I said, they gave him, like, even like this, like, hey, it's our roster shit anyway, so let's get Steamboat. So we have at least somebody who can work.
Yeah, so that was my immortal moment. Seeing Ricky the Dragon Steamboat still perform at least a higher level from what his body can do. I was like, yo, make that match watchable.
The Mickey Rourke thing where they actually planned to do a match until they realized that the movie was actually good and he didn't want to ruin like any Oscar chances.
Yeah. But yeah, that was my immortal moment. And though CM Punk went back to back and won Money in the Bank.
And still CM Punk gets pushed, sort of.
Sort of. You know, he barely got pushed last year. He won the title and then lost it unceremoniously. And then this year, 2009, he had a great run with Jeff Hardy, and then he ran to the Undertaker, and that was it.
Yeah.
But again, I'm gonna say this real quick. They had Matt Hardy versus Jeff Hardy, and you brought up Christian. They always try to do these brother versus brother matches and try and make it as, say, can we get another Brett versus Owen? And you can never do it. They can never top Brett versus Owen. I thought this match was decent. It had its moments, but it's like these two can only work an extreme style match. You're not gonna get no technical match out.
And no PG era Extreme Rules match.
No, all the PG era Extreme Rules match. Like, come on, just throw the concept out the window.
Yes,
you're not gonna get blood. You're not gonna get, super hardcore spots.
Yeah, and I don't even fault the Hardys for this. I think they delivered the best they could at this point. Although it was Jeff Hardy not being at his best.
Yeah.
Which is a very narrow time window.
But yeah, it is what it is, man. But I want to talk about the main event first before we talk about Undertaker Shawn, because once again, Triple H felt that the title match should go last. Oh, come on. Stop it, man. Hey, he should have wiped it off. But that match will always be immortal for me, even with that little white slob on Owen's mouth. But Triple H felt that his title match should go last. And then on top of that...
when he came back from an injury.
Again. And on top of that, they made it worse by saying if Triple H lose by disqualification, he lose the title. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And right then and there, you already took the heat away from the match.
Yeah.
Because this was supposed to be a straight up brawl. It needed to be no disqualification for what Randy did to the McMahons.
Exactly, and I still personally prefer the Legend Killer gimmick for Randy Orton, but when he started with the punt kick, was he made basically the crazy Ken Shamrock gimmick work.
And this is where he should have won the match. Triple H should have not won this match. Randy was hot. He destroyed the McMahons. So validating that by putting the belt on him and having him wipe out Triple H would have really made Randy right there. He destroyed Triple H and he took the title. But once they added that stipulation to it, it sucked all the heat out the match. And then you gonna have it last after Shawn and Taker delivered their match. The match just had no chance.
And also, already Cena winning again the fucking title, which sucked out the energy from everything. The little energy that was left after the fantastic Undertaker Michaels match. That, just Cena.
and next week, I know both of us is gonna rant when we get to that WrestleMania where Triple H beats Sting. My brain is already starting to fry the closer we get to that WrestleMania.
Yeah, also, Sting should have gotten his original theme song and not the weird. It's
But yeah, that match just had no heat whatsoever. Triple H won, and it was bleh.
At this point, it was just probably was a time where WrestleMania all the tickets must have been cheap because nobody gave a fuck.
But Shawn and Undertaker gave us the match that saved the show. Saved the show.
Yeah.
Without this match, this show, for the 25th WrestleMania, this show would have been complete garbage.
I mean, it was complete garbage, but at least it had a match.
I'm talking about take away this match, complete garbage. Add this match, it's garbage. But at least it's salvageable with this match.
There are Taboo Tuesdays that had a better card than WrestleMania.
And man, they delivered big time. I like the entrance where Shawn is coming down dressed in white.
Oh yeah.
And then Undertaker comes from the ground with the darkness. And the way they delivered this match was so damn good. Yeah. It's they took the best elements for what they did in 97, 98, and they amplified it with this match here.
They also did they just recently, I think, did a very good commentary with Shawn and The Undertaker on it.
Yes. I watched that. I love when they do that.
Yeah,
I love when
and,
watching them talk the match.
what I also love about it when they say, "Oh, they never had a bad match." Okay, everybody's ignoring the ground show. Look at it.
But see, the Ground Zero match was good, but it had shit finish. Like I thought that match was good, but then you get to that bullshit finish. I'm like, fuck.
Maybe I gotta rewatch it. It was just it felt. I'm not mad because, like Bobby Heenan wrote in his book when he quoted Gorilla Monsoon, if you're not in this business to make money, you're an idiot.
Yeah, and they like, well, we gotta get another match out of this, so we gotta give this screwy finish so we can get to Hell in the Cell. Yeah. So it worked out. It's just that Ground Zero match just had a weak ending. But this match here was like, had us on the edge of our seat. And that spot where Undertaker dived over the ropes and damn near brained himself out the fucking business.
Oh yeah,
that was insane. The fact that he was able to get up from it.
Wasn't it Deuce who didn't catch him as a cameraman and it's like,
and he caught massive heat because he mistimed it.
I love when Shawn and the Undertaker went through the match, and then the scene came and you could see Undertaker like, you could see, but he didn't mention that he should have caught him at the end.
So it's like, that was like the one major botch of the match. But it added to the match because now is Undertaker going to make it into the ring? Yeah. So I thought this match just delivered, and it was the match of the night. And, that backflip into the tombstone was a great spot. I mean, it's always a great spot when you have two guys like that can deliver.
Yeah. It's really hard to say which one was the better one, the first or the second.
Yeah, because 26 was... I felt like 25 had the better atmosphere, but then 26 had the more stakes.
Yes. And with 26, we're already almost 3 hours in, and the final WrestleMania tonight, 26. I think it was a good choice to do it until 26, basically.
Yeah.
So we have like the Shawn leaving comeback until Shawn then really retires.
But let's get the shit out the way with Bret Hart versus Vince McMahon.
First of all, I want to say my note says fuck Cena. And yes, and also I say Vince should have gone over.
Look, I don't give a fuck. That was Vince versus WrestleMania match.
Yes.
The WrestleMania matches he had, that was the worst. And Bret Hart's limitations, I can see why, because you can only get so much out of Bret, who suffered a stroke and all that stuff. So, to be honest, it should have been a complete squash, and Bret should have went over.
No.
I know you're speaking from the perspective of Do-Rag Vince. So of course, Vince is.
I think he should screw him again.
It should have been a short match. Should have destroyed him once. Soft shoulder. Vince tap out. Bret wins. But no, they had to get the whole damn family involved and say, "Oh, the family joined Vince." I'm like,
I would have lured Bret in, exactly with putting like Stu Hart into the Hall of Fame, and then
not even Stu Hart. Put Bruce Hart in there for all the prickly shit he gonna do.
No, I would have booked it that way. I would have, of course, like, because Stu Hart went to the Hall of Fame. That's how they got Bret, like, to be there. But then I would have let Jerry Lawler hold the burial. But Stu Hart. And then screwed Bret out of the match.
Yes, Hogan did get the better Vince match. Yeah. For sure. We talked about that match. Yeah. And it was the best of the Vince matches.
Yeah. And it's like, I think there were a lot of wrong decisions at this WrestleMania, because I also thought that in the match with Randy should have not gone over against Teddy DiBiase Jr. or Cody.
Yeah, he kind of made them look like chumps.
Yeah.
He made them look like chumps. I didn't like that match.
And I still think I still think that you could have gotten more out of Ted DiBiase. You know, it's also very easy now to. He's a very easy target with all of his life decisions, etc. But I still think that Ted DiBiase could have been a main eventer. Booked, right? And of course, if he would.
He didn't have what his father had.
But it's also like at that point with. Because everybody actually thought that Ted was ahead of Cody. And I mean, look at Cody now. And like I say, it's always hard to tell. But
see, Cody, I felt like Cody had it more.
Cody had the mic work, of course.
Not just the mic work, but he had more of the drive and the passion. Whereas I felt like Ted didn't really show that. Like, they tried to put the $1 million gimmick on him, and he didn't really show that he could have done it.
Yeah, you remember it was his own fault if he worked more on it.
At least with Cody, they gave him a lot of various gimmicks like Dashing Cody Rhodes and Stardust, and he ate shit with the Stardust. But when he left, he's like, I'm gonna prove that I can be a star and work the indie circuits. And
that actually got me back into wrestling again.
With Cody?
With Cody, like that when he left, and it's basically to really follow like his goal list, like to get the NWA belt, to go to Japan and everything, to get the Ring of Honor belt, etc.
He even had a brief stop in TNA.
Yeah, it's like this was actually because it felt like wrestling is coming back through Cody.
And he wanted to really prove that, you know, wrestling is in my blood.
Yeah.
And he did what John Cena told Daniel Bryan he will never do. Because John Cena, I remember that promo with him and Daniel Bryan. John Cena said, if the WWE die, I'm retired. Which means you're not going to venture out to other promotions and just say, I want to wrestle there. Because wrestling is not in your blood, your passion. Whereas Cody, he was born into wrestling.
Yeah. John Cena may be a wrestling fan. Like, I think nobody can deny that he was not a wrestling fan. He's not a wrestler. He's still, to this point, he's not a wrestler. And like I quote myself again from my notes, fuck Cena.
And it's going to get even louder when we get into the next WrestleMania match.
But also mentioning, of course, 26, R-Truth. Was his first WrestleMania, I believe, huh?
Yeah, I think. Him and John Morrison lost to Showman's.
Yeah. Like, how you can make a more boring tag team than putting the Big Show in Miz?
I mean, it was a continuation of Jerry's show. Jesus.
Yeah. And yeah,
I look at the card and it's like and again, I'm gonna echo what you said. Fuck John Cena, because what we got out of Batista was the best run of heel work, and I was like, man, I wanted Batista to retain the title,
and then he taps out.
I wanted Batista to retain the title because I felt like that was him at his best when he was here. And when he lost that match, I was like, God, they can't get away from Cena.
Yeah. And also, CM Punk should have gone over Rey Mysterio. Love you, Ray. CM Punk. Like, there's just so many wrong decisions at this WrestleMania.
And you talk about dropping the ball on the straight edge society.
Yeah.
I mean, they completely dropped the ball on that.
I mean,
table.
Yeah. I mean, also like shout out like shout out to Luke Gallows, how to recover from the fastest game. And
at least his career went upwards after.
Yes, Bullet Club and everything. So good for him. Good for him.
Because Festus was like, good lord.
That
But the way they transformed him to Drew Gallows was great because of CM Punk. You know, and I love the Straight Edge Society. I thought it was great heel work. It was great promos. His entrance in the Rumble when we talked about the Royal Rumbles, how he was cutting promos on people.
Yes.
That was fantastic. And they completely dropped the ball on it afterwards.
And also, there is another big moment. There's another big moment, I think, at this WrestleMania that should have been at a better WrestleMania. But into a Hall of Fame introduction of Antonio Inoki with him being there.
Mm-hmm.
I think this, this is like having Hulk Hogan there. This is like having Harley Race there. This is like, of course, if you're gonna see later, luckily, Bruno Sammartino. Antonio Inoki, it's talking about Mount Rushmore of wrestlers, if you would count internationally, Inoki should be there. Should have never wrestled against Muhammad Ali, because Ali was never the same afterwards. But talking about big names in the business, like Antonio Inoki is basically if you would merge Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan in one person.
Hey man, we're talking 13 WrestleManias, 2 weeks in a row. Ain't no way in hell we're doing this within an hour.
Yeah.
We're talking matches, moments, everything.
It's 1 a.m. here. I'm full of caffeine, and I'm powered by the immortal force of McMahonism.
That do-rag is giving you all the power.
Hallelujah!
Marathon. Hey, next week we're talking 14 because we're gonna talk 27 of the 30.
40. Until 40. Yeah. During Vincent. I'm down.
But yeah, like HBK Undertaker 2, I love this match. And like I said, it could be either or, 25 or 26 when it comes to which match is better. I lean a bit more to 26 because of the stakes. Yeah. And I love that finish where Shawn just slaps Taker and Taker just gets mad.
Yeah.
Gives him the jumping tombstone. That had to wreck his knees, but damn it, that shit looked good.
I think still, when you listen to The Undertaker, I think also like when they both go through the match. I think when they both go to the match, you can see that The Undertaker is a little bit envious on what of a high note Shawn was getting out. Because after this, you can The Undertaker was always chasing this perfect moment to retire, but
the Triple H matches we'll talk next week. It could have been a nice exit for him.
Yeah,
it was one storyline within these 4 years.
Yeah, the one when all three had their curtain call moment. Would have been the perfect outpoint. Yeah.
But yeah, the match here, and they smartly said main event Triple H and Shawn Michaels.
Yes.
I mean Undertaker and Shawn Michaels.
Because it really, you would have lost really nothing if you would just turn on the pay-per-view for that one match.
And speaking of Triple H, look where he's at on the card. He's fighting Sheamus on the 5th match on the card. 4th in terms of pay-per-view. And
also, Sheamus should have gone over.
I mean, if you're gonna book Sheamus to be pushed this strongly, because he was the champion before this.
Well, yeah.
Again, he was another one that got pushed too quickly to the title.
I wouldn't. It was so hard because at this point, there was like today we have like an overflow of talent. At this point, it really felt that they were taking Sheamus out of nowhere and size-wise, he immediately was a threat.
But I felt like the way he won the title from Cena
Yeah.
was kind of lame and cheap. And it's
doesn't matter if you take the title of Cena; it's always good.
I was like, man, you got to. But again, Cena didn't lose the way he should have lost.
I know.
It was a tables match.
Like I said,
Cena didn't even want to take the 1, 2, 3 and lose the same.
And like I said, it always gets into the category. At least it's not Cena.
Hey man, I hope we're not going too long to the point where people are like, man, these guys still alive? Man? Like, hey, we're talking 13 WrestleManias in a row. And next week we're talking 14, so it's going to be probably an extra 15 minutes on that.
Next week, basically, we can probably go right into WrestleMania 41.
As well. Night 1 of WrestleMania will be live. I'm not guaranteeing it. I don't want people to hear me and say, oh.
And they will ask him, wait, they brought Vince back? No, next week I'm not going to wear a Durek.
But yeah. And it's funny because 3 hours and the voice is starting to really crack, you know.
Yeah.
I'm sounding like Vince. But yeah, again, it's always fun, you know, going through these WrestleManias again. And like I said, I had a blast watching some of the matches, especially Hogan and Rock. That match was like top tier crowd. Knowing how to work the crowd and knowing how to show this is how we work.
Exactly. Sadly, for next week it's gonna be not so much pleasure. I think there's gonna
next
be
week we're gonna be going straight full bore into PG nonstop, and it's like, man, this is some boring shit. Yeah. Really is. And like I said, I just could not watch.
If you wanna be there next week, Al.
We briefly mentioned Booker T and Swerve. We didn't talk about that whole thing because we're trying to focus just on WrestleMania, but we did briefly mention the whole Booker T Swerve. And whatever, man. Swerve should be more concerned with how he lost that match against Moxley with the Young Bucks interfering. Looking like a chump.
I mean, also what is excellent, Booker T commentating this fantastic Oberfemi versus Moose match on NXT.
Man, Oberfemi is just...
He's the real deal. Like,
yes.
He's already ready. But I really hope they get the right moment because he's like one of these once in a generation talents that you can debut like right in the main event.
Sadly it is.
It's like the sad thing is I managed to avoid it by not watching wrestling anymore back then, but now I have to. It's like I can't escape.
I'm already worried when we get to that scene of Bray Wyatt match.
And you know what's the saddest thing is, like, we booked ourselves into this position.
Hey, this was your idea, dude.
I know.
This was your idea. I thought this was like a Herculean task to cover all the WrestleManias. Because I knew I'm only going to cherry pick matches to watch. I am not watching these entire events.
What did I say? What is like I broke rule number 1: never work yourself into a shoot.
Obo is the real deal.
Like he can be like he's like the Brock Lesnar kind of guy you can just put into the movie.
And he just got so much character and he can cut the promos. Like, this guy
how would Booker say, no bread, just meat?
And I love that match he had with Moose.
Oh, that one was so fantastic.
That was a great match. And I'm already looking at Moose like he's already looking to join WWE once his contract is up.
As he should. But yeah, Oberfemi is it's so fun that when you watch NXT, because I do think that Trick Williams has a lot of charisma. He still can't work a match really, in my opinion. And then the moment that Oberfemi, came won immediately like the contract for title match, won the North American title, and then now of course being the NXT champion. He's fantastic on the mic. He has such a he has fantastic humor that doesn't make him look silly. Hey
Donnie.
He can do everything. Hey, Master Don. Like over Femi is there is no weakness. There is absolutely no weakness.
Yeah, so he's amazing, and I agree with you. I do like Trick, and I've been kind of liking him more and more because he's been going kind of unhinged.
Yeah, it's.
I think he has great charisma. He's got a great look, and his work is okay at best. He
still has to learn a lot. He has to learn a lot. I think that the feud with Eddie Thorpe helped him a lot.
Yeah, we are troopers, Pete. We are troopers.
I'm just working and watching Wrestlemanias for the last 2 weeks.
But I will say that this is super fun. This is super fun. It is. You get to relive moments that you love. You get to relive moments that you hate. You get to relive moments that made you sad, happy, whatever. But it is fun.
My brain cells died to a point that I was like, "Fuck it, I'm rocking the Durek." Durek wins.
So yeah, we're gonna call it quits because my voice is dying. Yeah. His brain cells is getting tightened by that do-rag. So we're gonna call it quits. We'll be back next week to cover the last leg of WrestleManias, all the way up to 40 to prepare for 41 that same weekend. So we are signing off, and there is a Comic Con crew this week. We're gonna talk some comedy movies.
What can I say to it except for hallelujah?
Hallelujah indeed. Have a great weekend, y'all. See you next week.